Chapter 11. Who wears their clothes properly when they sleep? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing that De Zhuang had no objection, Tang Wan happily picked him up and smiled, walking into the bathroom. Cats didn't like water. In the past, when he bathed him, De Zhuang was extremely reluctant. This time, when he mentioned that they would bathe together, the cub didn't object. Did he fear that if he didn't obey, then he wouldn't like him? Tang Wan laughed. This was the benefit of buying Jin Xiaopang, that De Zhuang had a feeling of impending crisis. Tang Wan held De Zhuang in one hand and began to pour water into the bathtub with the other. He gauged the weight in his hand and laughed. De Zhuang, did you grow a little? You sunk a little. The cat in his arms remained motionless. Tang Wan rubbed against his head and assured him, you've become chubbier. Zong he. Tang Wan placed his baby beside the tub and touched his legs. Chubbier. He touched the cat's belly. A lot of meat. He touched the cat's butt again. Really a lot of meat. Chubby, 3 consecutive strikes. Zong he's tail covered his chest. He was strong, not fat. Feeling that Tang Wan's hands touched his waist again, Zong he glared at Tang Wan angrily. You still aren't stopping. Tang Wan was amused and joked, you're a little troublemaking child, and your fur hasn't even fully grown. The more you're like this, the more I want to smack you. Zong he bared his teeth. At this moment, he had a strong urge to shift into a tiger. However, after considering the consequences of his transformation, Zong he held back, only using his paw to swat at Tang Wan's outstretched hand. This person, digging for trouble, didn't even know what he was doing. Seeing that De Zhuang was really angry, Tang Wan didn't dare to tease him anymore. Otherwise, the child would hide, then he wouldn't be able to find him. He began to take off his clothes and prepared to take a bath. Tang Wan was thin, with a small frame, but his joints didn't protrude. In modern people's words, he was a skinny beauty. Zong he glanced over. He stiffly turned his face away, ears tinted red. Suddenly, he began to regret. Why did he promise to bathe together? Looking for trouble again. It was him who didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't help turning his head again. Zong he raised his ears in dissatisfaction. He was too thin, didn't eat enough meat. You wouldn't learn well from those little stars in the entertainment industry. The marshal believed that it was better for a wife to be chubby. When he took him out, then people would know that he doted on his wife. If he was so thin at a glance, then it would be like those fat elders and their partners who didn't eat well. After Tang Wan finished removing his clothes, he took De Zhuang and stepped into the bathtub together. He placed the cat on his chest, cupped some water with his hands and wetted De Zhuang's back. If you're afraid of water, just obediently lie down and don't fall. Zong he's 2 paws were pressed on Tang Wan's chest. His paw pads seemed as though they had been scalded, and he felt like he didn't know where to place them. Are you so afraid of water? Tang Wan rubbed and rubbed the belly of his beloved baby. It felt inconvenient to bathe like this. He bent his legs and dropped De Zhuang, belly up and falling with his 4 limbs in the air. I'll wash your belly, your fur is just too long. Fortunately, Beta Ursi minoris is spring all year around. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to stand the summer. Tang Wan turned his head and looked at the shelf next to him. They had run out of De Zhuang's bath wash. You have to make do with your cousins, both of you are the same species. They should both be hair-conserving bath wash. Zong he's face was solemn. No, that was for human use. He didn't like bathing in his original form. Tang Wan squeezed out some bath wash, working it into a lather with his hands, and even washed the kitten's paws. Throughout, Zong he looked at Tang Wan with a guarded gaze. He could only wash the upper body, not the lower. Pfft look at you like this. Tang Wan pinched his baby's cheeks. Who wants to wash your butt? Treating you like this is no different from how your relatives would, you still glare at me. Then wash yourself. Seeing that the cub on his leg hadn't moved, Tang Wan suddenly blinked and approached him curiously. Do you beast men go to the bathroom and wipe your butt? I know kittens lick themselves. Zone he jumped up in a split second. In a bad mood, he smacked the water, nauseated. Who shits and doesn't wipe his ass? Who eats his own shit? What kind of mistaken assumption was this? Not only did he fail to recognize species, but his cognitive deviation had also reached sub-human levels. After the marshal finished raging, he lost all of his strength. He tucked his head into Tang Wan's shoulder. He had accepted his fate. He couldn't be upset with Tang Wan, it would just anger him to death. So, he could only spoil him. He still hadn't washed his butt. When Tang Wan snuck a peek, there was still a hint of disgust in the cub's eyes. He took him out and blow-dried him, then smoothed and brushed out his fur. He tossed De Zhuang onto the bed, then pounced and took him into his arms. Sleep. Don't face me with your butt. Zong he. During the night, there was a heated discussion about cats all over the internet. Jin Xiaopeng's video click-through rate had exceeded tens of billions. In the past, there had also been Meng pets running on the ground and flying through the sky. Tang Wan's live broadcast had hosted quite a lot. Now, the kitten had smashed onto the scene. It had conquered the hearts of countless people on Earth, and had conquered the people of the future again. In addition, it was an extinct species, and even renowned scholars wanted to study its habits. What's more, they wanted to find Tang Wan to buy the cat in his hands. However, Tang Wan's identity remained a mystery that no one could uncover, even as the audience discussed it. He didn't have any identifying information on the internet. Now, people were even more curious. What was his identity, and what was he hiding it for? If he had the ability to broadcast live, then he should have the ability to appear As for the person involved, Tang Wan indulged himself in cats and couldn't extricate himself. That morning, the sunshine was perfect. Tang Wan was holding De Zhuang in his arms, sitting on the bamboo chair in the garden. He placed De Zhuang on the table and gently brushed the kitten's long fur. Long-haired cats weren't good in this aspect. Their fur knotted too easily and it had to be brushed regularly. They should be brushed several times a day to keep their look top-notch. After brushing, Tang Wan held the kitten's face. He stroked the kitten's ears, looked into his golden eyes, and boasted enthusiastically, "Your appearances level is too high, your eyes are pretty, your nose is adorable, your mouth is cute, your ears are lovely, all the bones in your body are beautiful, and your fur looks even better." Zong He's ears twitched, and he turned his head to look away. His ears were tinged red. This babbling mouth. Every day, he was fed with this soup of infatuation, and after that, he still wanted to divorce him. Intolerable. Lin Bo placed tea and snacks onto the table and looked at the couple's warm, harmonious atmosphere. He touched his beard in relief. Furen likes the young master so much. He'll have a cub with the marshal later. If the child takes after the marshal, they would surely be the same, and would even have the same fur color. Tang Wan didn't know how to respond. It was too early to talk about children. Sure enough, the elders liked to put all of their energy into children. Zong he looked at his own fur. Tang Wan noticed that his tail flicked twice. He couldn't bear to touch his tail. This fur color was really beautiful. If he had a son like De Zhuang, Tang Wan covered his face with his hands, he was thinking too far. Bored, he poked De Zhuang's belly and received a frigid look from the kitten in exchange. Tang Wan held his chin in one hand and got close to the other, asking curiously, "De Zhuang, when you go home and your relatives ask what you learned from uncle, you still can't call out, can you? Meow for me." The kitten twisted and turned his back to Tang Wan, leaving him with only the butt and a furry tail. Tang Wan pulled the unruly cub back and continued, you don't even know how to knead for milk, are you really a milk cat? Tang Wan grasped the kitten's two front paws, pulled him into his arms, pressed the paws into his shoulders, and kneaded, kneaded, and kneaded, do you know now? Still, it was written all over the kitten's face that it would be a long story. Tang Wan's heart was weary, he was afraid that the child was dumb. Though he tried to teach him, the cub couldn't learn the things that the other members of his species already knew. Lin Bo reminded him with a smile, Furan, he is a tiger, not a cat. What tiger calls out, meow meow dot? Then, he could call out, ba ba dot. Tang Wan remembered a video he had seen, where the baby tiger had cried out like a sheep. That cute star he liked had ba ba dot edition. Zong he grimaced. When on earth could this fool distinguish species? I'll make you a good meal, deal. Meow once with me. Small paws step, I want to give you a small braid. The fur on your tail is long, do you want me to tie a bow on it? No, the bow must be on the neck, like a bow tie. Listening to Tang Wan continuously whispering in his ear, he had no choice but to climb onto Tang Wan's chest, placed his head onto his shoulder, and went to sleep. When Tang Wan saw him like this, he couldn't bear to tease him anymore. He leaned back in his chair and let the kitten in his arms sleep more comfortably. He logged on to the personal information center, his account already had 1,000,000 star coins. He excitedly rubbed De Zhuang. Lucky cat rubbed twice a day every day to make a fortune. Then, he turned on the system. After the cat debuted online, the popularity level in the system increased sharply. The system had unlocked amphibians, frogs, and turtles. There were also aquatic vertebrates, carp, koi, and the like. Tang Wan's face was full of disgust, go away. No fur, what kind of pets were these? They could only be food. Tang Wan looked at it indifferently for a while. After he calmed down, he disregarded it. He would buy and raise a few koi. Lin Bo, do we have a fish tank in the house? Lin Bo laughed as he pruned the flower bushes nearby, no tank, is a fish pond okay? Tang Wan was interested. He tilted his head and asked, how big is the fish pond? Lin Bo slowly replied, there are big and small ones. In this garden, there's a small one 40 square meters large. There's a big fountain in the yard where you can also raise fish. There's also a river behind the hill. If you want to, you can raise sharks there too. Tang Wan stood up with a light smile. The little fish pond in the garden is fine. I want to raise some koi fish. Koi fish. The extinct one. Yes, it can bring people money, happiness, and good luck. If we keep a few at home, it would add a vigorous atmosphere. In the very same day, the fish pond was cleaned and filled with water. The filters were also opened and switched on. In the evening, Tang Wan bought quite a few baby koi and put them in the water. He placed De Zhuang next to the water, encouraging him, cats that don't know how to catch a fish aren't good cats, go. Pounce. Don't be afraid. Zong he. About the question of his species, they must have a serious talk. That night, the marshal finally emerged from the treatment room and laid on the bed, half-clothed. He hooked his finger at his partner and said earnestly, come here, let's talk about species. Tang Wan ground his teeth, coldly saying, put your clothes on properly, then we'll talk. Zong he raised his eyebrows, who wears their clothes properly when they sleep? Tang Wan. You're right, I'm speechless. But how can we talk like this? This could only be flirting. Zong he. Draw me like one of your French girls _.3 angle, Tang Wan. **, Tang Tang, he's offering himself to you on a silver platter. Please. Take him. Chapter 12. I'll make a little skirt for you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker under these circumstances, his husband was inadequately clothed, sprawled on the bed asking him about species. No matter how Tang Wan looked at it, the atmosphere was ambiguous. Tang Wan felt like his feet had been nailed to the ground. He couldn't move. What are you scared of? Are you afraid that I will eat you? Zhong He slowly and carefully questioned him, looking at Tang Wan's panicked expression. He wasn't in a rush. He had already known Tang Wan's nature, which was too soft and wasn't sufficient. Without being forced, he wouldn't emerge from his hard protective shell. But too hard wasn't good either, it would only make him more defensive and mistrustful. Zhong He saw Tang Wan's unnatural face, so he knew that if he pushed any harder, Tang Wan would be annoyed. He indifferently smiled. I'm not in good health yet. You don't have to worry that I'll fulfill my obligations towards you right now. Tang Wan breathed a sigh of relief. Then say it earlier, ba. This resolute manner had frightened him. What do you want to discuss about species? Tang Wan slowly walked towards the bedside and sat at the end of the bed, keeping a safe distance away. Zhong He was happy. Why are you afraid of me? Tang Wan awkwardly laughed, and scooted forward until he neared Zhong He's waist, not afraid. The next second, the other party had seized his hand. Tang Wan's breath shuddered and stiffened for a split second, but he didn't shake off his hand. What do you want to talk to me about? Talk from being like a teasing cat to suddenly becoming so serious, Zhong He was helpless. This person, creating trouble out of nothing. Zhong He told him solemnly, De Zhuang isn't a cat. He's a tiger. PFFTT. Tang Wan couldn't resist laughing at the marshal's serious explanation. Saying it so gravely, did De Zhuang feel too wronged, or could his uncle not stand it anymore? De Zhuang complained to you? Zhong He nodded. Tang Wan smiled and asked, how did he tell you? Did he meow? Zhong He pinched Tang Wan's fingertips. Meow. Tang Wan chuckled, it's the small kitten complaining, meow meow meow. Zhong He laughed. Your meow sounds better than his. Tang Wan pouted. He had deliberately told him to meow like a cat, was his heart black? Zhong He smiled and patted the interior of the bed, closed in by his body, indicating that Tang Wan should go to bed. He's a tiger, he can't call out like a cat. Tang Wan had no choice but to climb over Zhong He. How could this person be stuck in this position every time? He had just climbed over when his waist was tightly pulled in. Tang Wan was stunned, and Zhong He's head immediately rested on his shoulder. He glanced back nervously, looking at the person draped behind him. How was he the same as De Zhuang, so sticky once they were in bed? Zhong He was still stubborn. Tiger, not cat. Alright, he's a tiger, not a cat. I'll listen to you. Tang Wan treated the other like a big cat, while he wanted to climb out. He inexplicably felt like he was being pressed down by De Zhuang. The feeling of being unable to crawl out was very uncomfortable. Just sleep like this. Don't move. The voice in his ear was lazy, but didn't leave any room for argument. Tang Wan quickly settled down and lifted his hands. After several tentative explorations, he finally placed the palms of his hands in Zhong He's hair. He combed his fingers through gently, like coaxing a big cat. Sleep. Good night. Zhong He chuckled, turned off the lights and gently kissed Tang Wan's chin. Good night. Tang Wan blushed and tucked his head into Zhong He's shoulder. Please be a little less honest. Early in the morning, Tang Wan crouched beside the fish pond and fed the koi. Zhong He stood behind him, indifferently looking at the ugly fish without appetite. He didn't understand why Tang Wan liked these kinds of furless, ugly creatures. Tang Wan watched the fish scramble for food. These fish have a long lifespan and are said to live for hundreds of years. Zhong He couldn't hide the disdain in his eyes, but still said seriously, when we grow old, if you still like them, you can take care of them in their old age. It was hard to imagine that when they were already this ugly as babies, how ugly they would be when they grew up. Their colors weren't the same, but a swirl of colors. The marshal, who was very critical towards the colors of animals' coats, was extremely disgusted. Tang Wan didn't turn around. He raised his eyebrows, dipped his hand into the pond and gently tapped at the surface of the water. A group of fish crowded around the hand in an instant. You mean we can grow old together? Why not? Zhong He approached him, stopping only a step away. His tall figure blocked the sunshine and shrouded Tang Wan's whole figure in shadow. Do you still want to divorce me? Tang Wan raised his head and saw the seriousness in the other's eyes at a glance. The sunshine behind him was warm, and Tang Wan squinted slightly under the brilliant sunlight. He felt that the other's golden eyes were like a blazing inferno, with enough power to melt his soul. Tang Wan pursed his lips and smiled. Okay, I'll trust you. He stretched out his hands. Pull me up. Zhong He was perplexed. This time, Tang Wan didn't keep his distance. Tang Wan urged, hurry, my feet are numb. Zhong He raised his eyebrows, grabbed Tang Wan's outstretched hands, and pulled him up. He watched Tang Wan bounce around, stamping his feet. The corner of his mouth curved slightly upwards. He reached out and poked Tang Wan a little. Tang Wan stood at the edge of the pool, his feet were still numb and were startled by the poke. He reflexively grabbed onto Zhong He's arm and pulled himself up. Zhong He put his arms around Tang Wan's waist and nodded, pleased. N. What N? What does N mean? Tang Wan was incensed and smacked Zhong He. Only after his fit of rage passed, he noticed that the atmosphere wasn't quite right. Zhong He bowed his head and kissed the man in his arms, who dared to be stunned. He had said that they would live out their old age together, so he shouldn't want to go anywhere else. This time, Tang Wan mercilessly slapped Zhong He on the back, red-faced and indignant. There are still people here, pay attention to what you're doing. Zhong He looked around. Where were the people? His ears worked well enough. Benov calm Tang Wan pressed his hands against his forehead. He was focusing on the wrong thing. He shouldn't act like a rogue when he was married. In the afternoon, Zhong He went to receive treatment again. Tang Wan wanted to follow, but he felt too embarrassed. He asked Lin Bo and determined that nothing was wrong, so he went back to their room to sleep. He could sleep more than the average person, but he didn't know why. In the evening, Tang Wan, who had slept enough, released Jin Xiaopang and went to the fish pond with him, hoping that he could see its expression when it couldn't catch a fish. Jin Xiaopang gave him a lot of face, not at all like De Zhuang's lofty indifference. The chubby cat circled around the fish pond excitedly after it saw a fish. It tentatively clawed at the fish, trying to catch one. But it didn't like water. When it touched the water, it pulled back quickly, shook its paw twice, licked it clean, and stretched its claws out. Tang Wan was amused by its actions. He took pictures with his terminal and uploaded it to his Weibo. Cat with fish and water. Jin Xiaopang couldn't catch a fish and anxiously whined, occasionally whining like a child who couldn't get a toy. Tang Wan laughed and picked it up, giving it dried meat to eat and praised, "This is a real cat. Cats have to meow." In a crabapple tree not far away, a black and gold fuzzy dumpling solemnly stared at Tang Wan, who was with Jin Xiaopang, with frigid eyes. Tang Wan felt the back of his head prickle, as if being pricked by something. He subconsciously looked back, instantly staring into a pair of golden eyes. Tang Wan was startled by the look, and he quickly put Jin Xiaopang away, saying flatteringly, "De Zhuang has returned, quickly come down. Daddy embraces." With a cold snort, the kitten jumped down from the tree, thumping the grass. The grass was tossed askew and a pit was formed. Tang Wan ran over, laughing, and held his darling, holding him up high. Zhong He's eyes fell on Tang Wan's chest. The cat's eyes narrowed slightly, pupils turning into slits. There was a gold cat hair. Tang Wan quickly patted himself, grabbed De Zhuang, rubbed his face, and smiled. Against this look, it was difficult to remain angry. Having coaxed the possessive, ill-tempered, and wayward kitten, Tang Wan held him. They strolled through the garden, discussing pleasantly, De Zhuang, Daddy needs to talk to you about a serious matter. Zong he silently looked at his paws, the 1051st Daddy. Tang Wan continued, the next time I broadcast live, I want you to be a part of the action. Zong he pressed his paws against Tang Wan's forehead. Don't even think about it. He wouldn't do such a shameful thing. Tang Wan cackled, I'm going to prepare a few pieces of fabric and make you a new set of clothes. Zong he immediately had a bad feeling. Tang Wan jogged back to his room with the kitten in his arms. He took out a piece of cloth decorated with pink flowers from the express box and showed it to Zong he. I'll make you a pair of flower-patterned pants and a pink flower bib, so you won't get dirty when you eat later. Zong he. After dinner, Tang Wan found that the pink flower cloth he had prepared had disappeared. Tang Wan suspiciously looked at the dozing cat lying on the windowsill. De Zhuang, could it be that you didn't like the color, so you took it and buried it? The cat lying on the windowsill remained motionless. Tang Wan had no choice. I was just teasing, it was for Jin Xiaopang. You should find it for me as soon as possible. Only then did Zong he open his eyes, looking at Tang Wan without much trust. Tang Wan raised his hands. I swear. Zong he jumped off the windowsill and headed towards the garbage can in the corner. He tapped the garbage can with his paw, indicating that he had tossed it here, and if Tang Wan wanted it, he could retrieve it himself. When Tang Wan opened the garbage can, the cloth was already dirty and useless. He stared at the kitten for a moment, looked into his beautiful, big eyes, and sighed. You win. Who let you grow up to become so good-looking? The heartbroken Daddy Tang took out the cloth. There was another red one inside, and he quietly muttered, if this was made into red pants. Zong he's eyes showed even more disgust. A cat dressed like a bullfighter, wouldn't it burn the eyes? In order to protect himself from Tang Wan's sudden change of mind to put him in the red pants, De Zhuang was quickly taken away by his family. The marshal who had just finished his treatment left the treatment room. Tang Wan still lamented. He still wanted De Zhuang to wear the red pants. With De Zhuang's level of appearance, his handsomeness would surely soar to the heavens. Tang Wan held Jin Xiaopang, showing him off to Zong he, look, isn't it cute? This fur color looks very good. The marshal calmly told him, we can't be born with this kind of color. But it could be possible for it to be like De Zhuang's. Tang Wan's eyes brightened. He laughed and said mischievously, I've never seen what your original form looks like. Zong he proudly declared, 1,000 times bigger than De Zhuang. Tang Wan thought about the size, then glanced at the other. Are you kidding? How big is 1,000 times? Like a giant or Godzilla? Zong he laughed and replied, yes, I was just teasing you. Tang Wan fumed and glared at him out of the corner of his eye, do you have nothing better to do? Zong he cupped Tang Wan's cheeks, turning his head back around. I'll show you when we go to bed. Tang Wan's heart thudded. Originally, there was nothing. How could he feel so ambiguous from what the other party said? Should he look forward to it? Or should he pretend to be blind? This couple is always going to bed, but no papa scene. Sniff. This chapter was also just plain adorable. Chapter 13. Your IQ is only good for transplanting rice seedlings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Tang Wan was ready to broadcast live. Zong he didn't know where he had picked the flowers from, but he inserted them in a white vase and sent them to his living room. It looked quite artistic. Tang Wan wondered if the marshal, a man of iron and steel, knew how to arrange flowers. Sure enough, Zong He placed the vase on top of Tang Wan's table. I have asked someone to buy the simple and elegant flowers. Tang Wan understood that Zong He already knew about his flower cutting. That's alright, if you can't stand it then you don't have to put them on display. I'm not an unreasonable person. You can be a little more unreasonable, I would be ready. Zong He meant that he would like to see him argue more, because he wanted to spoil him. Tang Wan touched his slightly heated face. He couldn't bear the other's direct attack. Thank you. Zong He nodded. Tang Wan was speechless. He had unexpectedly accepted the thanks so calmly. The marshal really was a confident man. It could be said that he had the temperament of a lord of tigers. Zong He leaned on the table and gently said to Tang Wan, when my health improves, I can take you out for a stroll. Tang Wan shook his head. Don't worry, if I need something, I can go by myself. Actually, I'm normally at home, I don't go out too often. It's good to be home and I can shop online. Everything is fine. Zong He nodded. Staying at home often is also good, really commendable. But, we still have to go out every once in a while and do what we want. Tang Wan didn't know why he would be so unexpectedly generous. Are you not afraid that I'll run away? As soon as he mentioned running away, Zong He smiled bitterly. I'll get someone to follow you. Tang Wan frowned and asked coldly, you're very afraid that I'll run away. Zong He paused, and then left without saying a single word. Tang Wan looked at the other's red ears and blinked. Somehow, he felt that the marshal was a little cute. At the beginning of the live broadcast, there were a lot of people watching. Tang Wan released Jin Xiaopang, and laid the cat's food bowl on the ground, letting him eat. He took out a pair of scissors and cut the cloth into several strips. The audience watched both the cat and Tang Wan. The things that Tang Wan made with his hands surprised them every time, but they didn't know what he was making this time. I'm making a small set of clothes for Jin Xiaopang, and a bow tie for De Zhuang. When Tang Wan saw many people questioning him in the comments, he explained with a single sentence. The comments were muddled. Excuse us, isn't this the most traditional way to make it? You still need to use scissors. Are you a tailor? Tang Wan looked at the scissors in his hands and the glue on the table. He laughed, this is the perfect combination of ancient tailoring techniques and modern science and technology. He used glue instead of needle and thread to join things together, so he could just cut and stick it together. Tang Wan only used needle and thread for sewing buttons. After leaving home, he was forced to practice his skills. Sewing pants. He couldn't do it. A wealthy young man, forced like that, Tang Wan felt that it was incredible. Tang Wan planned to make Jin Xiaopang a small set of clothes and a small hat. Under Tang Wan's hands, piles of cloth was quickly cut into many pieces. Many people wondered. Could it really be made into clothes? Shouldn't clothes be made from a whole piece of cloth? Now, technology could seamlessly fit it together, so the seams and thread couldn't be seen in any piece of clothing. As a result, many people thought that clothes were made intact. There were people who liked to look up information and shared it with everyone. It's a very old technique, and there are records of it in literature. It was used on Earth 1,000 years ago, but now, nobody uses it. Tang Wan laughed. He was an ancient man who hadn't fully integrated into present society. He was a soil dumpling full of dirt. Some habits couldn't be changed in a lifetime. Comments followed with praise. Tang really is a versatile person, knows everything. It should be said that he is a person who really likes Earth's culture. He had said long ago that his ancestors were from Earth. Allegedly, Earth used to be beautiful, but unfortunately, it could only be seen in pictures. After Tang Wan finished cutting, he stuck several pieces of cloth together with the fabric glue. He gave it a shake, and the form of the small outfit was created. He dyed the hat too. In order to achieve a 3D effect, he gave the cat the feeling of having a little person stand up. He also made a little pair of hands. European jacket, overalls, beret, finished. After allowing it to dry for 2 minutes, Jin Xiaopeng was brought over. Tang Wan put the clothes on the chubby cat. The audience was delighted at the sight. Too funny. I seem to be seeing a child pretending to be an adult. Too cute. Jin Xiaopeng, take 2 steps. Quickly. Strut arrogantly. The authentic catwalk had been lost for thousands of years. Please look. Please walk out with your emperor's demeanor. Tang Wan, holding his chin, looked at the chubby cat with a blank face and frowned. Do you think there's anything else missing? The comments all didn't know. Tang Wan picked up the scissors and the red cloth that De Zhuang had disliked so much. I think a tie is missing. How can a gentleman not wear a tie? In order to increase the stiffness of the tie, Tang Wan deliberately glued 2 same-sized pieces of cloth together to make it thicker. He made the tie with a strip of cloth down the middle and found a small bell in the box and glued it to the center. He put it on Jin Xiaopeng's neck. Perfect. After putting the clothes on, Jin Xiaopeng's chubby, round face became even more apparent. In addition to its silly appearance, the audience was amused. Cute. I want to raise it. If I had a cat, I would spend all my money on it. I would give it all my pocket money. Too cute. What a treasure. Why is it extinct? I really want to have one. Jin Xiaopeng looked at the camera with narrowed eyes and stretched out its paws, trying to capture the rolling screen. After 2 shots, it felt bored, sprawled out on the ground, and didn't move. Tang Wan was speechless. This child had begun to become lazy. Sure enough, wealth corrupted people. Did you think that if you didn't want to move, your father would passively watch you become fat? What a naive child. Tang Wan took out a milk candy that cat beastman cubs liked to eat and let Jin Xiaopeng sniff it. Jin Xiaopeng's eyes instantly went round and were instantly transfixed. Tang Wan tied the candy to a pole, then pushed the pole into a rotating wheel. Jin Xiaopeng looked straight at the candy, and it helplessly scrambled to chase the pole around the wheel. It wanted to eat. Not enough. It had to follow the pole if it wanted to reach. In the chubby cat's world, there was only eating. For the sake of eating, it could even give up its legs. Tang Wan smiled. This proves one thing. That your daddy is still your daddy. The audience wanted to laugh and slam on the table. Watching Jin Xiaopeng move his chubby legs to follow the pole, especially in his clothes, what a happy feeling. Tang Wan made a bow tie and said, I think this red color is suitable for De Zhuang. De Zhuang is as beautiful as a flower, face. Value bursting the meter. Even with just his face, wearing a small skirt wouldn't be inconsistent with his appearance. At this moment, Tang Wan felt that someone was staring at him from the doorway. He looked back to see Zhong He in his pajamas. He didn't know how long he had been standing there. His slightly narrowed golden eyes stared into him, as if he was staring at prey waiting to be slaughtered. Tang Wan's back went cold, and the fine hairs on his body all stood up. When Zhong He was cold-faced, his momentum was really strong. Terribly frightening. Tang Wan stuck out his tongue and grumbled, I was joking, I won't give a skirt for your nephew to wear. Zhong He had no choice but to say, go to bed at 9 o'clock, I'll wait for you. He left after he finished speaking. Every single word resounded in the broadcasting studio, and the audience blew up. Speak. Who was that man? Tang Wan's forehead pressed against his hands. The Marshal de Rennes couldn't have mouthed the words. Don't reveal your true voice, what if someone recognized it? The good thing was that Zhong He hadn't been seen in 3 years. The people of the empire only knew what he looked like and what he sounded like before the war. Under those circumstances, Zhong He spoke with the great dignity of a marshal, the deadly voice that would inspire excitement in people. It was unlike the soft, helpless voice he had just used to coax Tang Wan. The focus of the audience was on the relationship between this person and Tang Wan. There weren't any other directions they would go. Tang Wan looked back and found that he was gone. He calmly replied, "That was my wife." Audience. No way. Tang Wan tooted, "These people." He told them the truth, but they didn't believe him. The comments still had questions. Was that person your brother? Your father? Your uncle? Your home tutor? Your cousin? Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Their evaluation of the seniority of He's generation was a bit messy. He was just 29 years old, how could he be that old? The audience was still wondering. Do you have a partner? You really have a partner? No way, your voice sounds very young. If you were matched by the Star Network, you can refuse if you feel it is inappropriate. Yeah, I refused when it matched me to an uncle. I like younger men. There is a situation where it cannot be refused. If the other party is a soldier. The empire protected military marriages. If you wanted to call it off, only the military side could refuse. That can only be a senior officer, a rank of major or above. Ordinary soldiers do not have such privileges, don't talk nonsense. That they didn't even know Tang Wan's true face, so his partner was even more of a mystery. They all relied on guesses. The most annoying thing was that their guesses were going nowhere. Tang was too mysterious. A person asked. There's a post on the internet that's gossiping about what you look like. Tang, did you know? Tang Wan had pretended to be blind and ignored their comments, but he shook his head when he saw this one. I really didn't know. The audience didn't know what to say. What are you doing every day? Tang Wan solemnly pronounced his Weibo name. Eating, sleeping, and scolding De Zhuang. The comments were silent for a moment. It made sense, they were unexpectedly unable to answer. At this time, a Supreme VIP account suddenly popped up. Asking for a private chat. 5 million, for buying your cat. Tang Wan refused. Won't sell. I can shut down my live broadcast, but I won't sell my cats. The comments continued to be awkwardly silent. 5 million, Tang Wan had absolutely no interest. Even if he didn't start a live broadcast he wouldn't sell, as rigid as usual. The other party continued to raise the price. 2 million more. Tang Wan glanced at it, then pretended to be blind and ignored it. He was too lazy to listen. There would often be rich or noble people who wanted to buy his fur babies. He had refused many times, but people still came to ask him every now and then. The others in the audience couldn't stand it. Don't ask anymore. Isn't it good enough to watch the cat broadcasts? He said often that he won't sell, no matter how much money you offer. Not necessarily, not selling probably means that the amount hasn't reached what he wants. Give him 100 million and see if he sells it or not. Tang Wan sighed. I've said many times that I won't sell, no matter how much money is offered. The person who said that the amount hadn't reached what I wanted, your IQ is only good for transplanting rice seedlings. The audience was confused. What is transplanting rice seedlings? Tang Wan laughed, today's live broadcast is over. How about leaving some homework for you? What exactly does transplanting rice seedlings mean? People who know can leave a message on my Weibo. I'll randomly pick 20 people, and give 10,000 star coins per person. This attitude was essentially saying that he wouldn't miss the millions. At the end of the live broadcast, whether they were interested in transplanting rice seedlings or in the 10,000 star coins, they all went to find out what it meant. Libraries all over the place were all packed, and the network library traffic was also booming. Others posted directly to the internet to find the meaning of transplanting rice seedlings. As a result, the phrase, transplanting rice seedlings became popular on the internet. Many people asked for the origins of the phrase. As soon as the live video from Tang Wan's broadcast was released, Jin Xiaopeng, dressed in clothes, entered people's line of sight. Many people burst into tears at his cuteness. Tang Wan calculated the reward amount and was satisfied. He turned off the live broadcast and took off Jin Xiaopeng's clothes. After feeding the child, combing its fur, and playing with it with a cat stick for a while, it was placed back into the system. At this time, some people on the internet discovered the meaning of transplanting rice seedlings. It was a kind of brainless manual labor. During the humans' development on Earth, it was a way of growing food that their ancestors had used. Many people in the community didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Tang Wan never used dirty words to hurt people, but every time malicious people tried to slander him, when he retaliated, they wouldn't know the meaning of the words. If they wanted to know, they had to pore over books. Many fans educated their children. See. If you don't study hard, you won't even know what other people mean when they scold you. The phrase, "your IQ is only suitable for transplanting rice seedlings" was cultured, nuanced, and had a history. This mocking phrase was soon quickly spread on the campus network. Especially when the teachers scolded the students, if the qualified people wanted to scold others, they normally couldn't. So, in the end, they could only hate the fact that iron couldn't become steel and say, "Your IQ is only suitable for transplanting rice seedlings." Before Tang Wan had finished, Zhong He came to the door of his studio again and watched him tidy up the messy things on his table. Zhong He frowned. "You don't have to do this, you can find a servant to deal with it." Tang Wan laughed. "I don't have much else to do, I'll just smoothly do this small job and finish it." Zhong He's face was expressionless. "Then do you still want to see?" "See what?" When Tang Wan finished his question, it suddenly occurred to him that before he broadcasted, Zhong He had said that he would show him what his beast form looked like. Then, wasn't he many times larger than De Zhuang, a big cat? The marshal took care of his pajamas. He was ready to take off his clothes, he was tired of waiting. Tang Wan was stunned. "You be good, what are you doing taking off your clothes?" "Nonsense. How can I shift without undressing?" Zhong He took off his shirt. They weren't exaggerated, but the lines of his muscles on his upper body were obvious. "Come, return to our room. I'll show you." Tang Wan glanced at him and covered his face. Embarrassed, he caught up with Zhong He. He even had sexy abdominal muscles. Did this body really belong to someone who had been lying down for 3 years? He was green with envy. "He's stripping, degree. Chapter 14. Pounce and hold him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callis. The live studio and the bedroom faced each other, and Zhong He had already reasonably taken off his shirt at the door. After taking it off, he turned and went into the bedroom, only to discover that Tang Wan was still idling and being shy. He warned out loud, "Do you still want to see?" Tang Wan quickly followed, his curiosity piqued. He wondered exactly how much bigger the cat that was supposed to be many times larger than De Zhuang would be. When Zhong He returned to their bedroom and closed the door, he continued to take off his trousers. Tang Wan was shocked. "Why are you still taking it off?" Zhong He stared at Tang Wan as if he was an idiot. If he didn't take it off, should all his clothes just burst off? Then Tang Wan knew how foolish his question had been. There was a flash of white light, and even without looking at his tail, his body was more than 2 meters long. The big black and gold cat impressively appeared on the bed. Without undressing, all the clothes would surely be destroyed. Tang Wan's brain had already stopped working. Usually, the men in the army might still be ridiculed. Wouldn't they be collectively streaking? Looking at Zhong He now, there was only one thought. Pounce and hold him. Could you imagine what holding a warm big cat with a lot of long fur would feel like? The cat was large enough to be a sofa that his whole body could nestle in, and it was soft to the touch. Thinking about that feeling, his whole heart and liver melted. Although he had always said that he was a tiger, he wasn't like the tigers Tang Wan has seen at the zoo at all. He, a variant tiger, had no on his forehead, his body was much bigger, his frame was stronger, and he had long fur. He undoubtedly was like a grown-up Dezhuang. It was just that his body was many times larger, and was completely devoid of Dezhuang's milky smell and secondary disease attitude. This was a true king. Tang Wan took a deep breath, looking at the other's smooth fur draped on the bed. He couldn't help but reach out and touch the other's stomach, and his fingers trembled. Wasn't this breaking the rules? Growing into such a big cat, how could he bear it? Tang Wan couldn't help but want to pounce on and roll with him. He raised his paw and waved impatiently, "Come on, don't you want to come? Why are you being aloof?" Having said that, the long tail flicked slightly and his long, elegant fur swayed in front of Tang Wan's eyes. Being hooked like this, Tang Wan couldn't control himself and immediately buried himself in the fur. Tang Wan was about to cry, it was already the pinnacle of his life. He was holding a big cat over 2 meters long. He lay still, letting Tang Wan's whole body lie on top of his, plastered together from head to waist and rubbing his face against his neck. He had spoiled Tang Wan, who was quite pleased with himself. He had already said that he had the best and the most fur in the galaxy. All the other beast men were bald compared to him. Tang Wan rolled back and forth several times on He before he finally got up and sat beside the other. He looked at the rubbed and messy fur apologetically. "I'm sorry, I got too excited." He shook his neck, but the fur didn't flatten much. However, he wasn't angry. "It doesn't matter, I'm your partner." He looked at his own fur and said, "Messed up like this, no wonder married men don't pay any attention to their appearance. They can't stress about it at all." Tang Wan coughed, embarrassed, and went to find a brush. "Sorry, I'll brush it for you right away." For the first time, the marshal enjoyed his partner's grooming service, his eyes narrowing in cozy satisfaction. Tang Wan's whole body was nested in He's arms, close to his stomach, and enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by fur. He took advantage of the big cat and began to brush its fur. The corner of his mouth quirked up, in a good mood. The pair of dimples on his face was especially sweet. After brushing for more than half an hour, he felt that it was enough. He knew that Tang Wan had secretly stolen and collected some of his fur. He knew that he liked his fur. The marshal hummed, pleased. His partner had already indulged himself in his fur. He opened his eyes and was domineering, telling Tang Wan, who was still in his arms, "When I recover, I'll take you to the mountains behind us to run, and you'll sit on my back." Tang Wan didn't hesitate to agree, nodding hard. He had been conquered by the fur and his brain was completely offline, unable to respond. Why were the marshal and Dezhuang so similar? For the next 2 days, the transplanting incident remained hot. The focus of attention had shifted to Jin Xiaopang. They also discussed Tang Wan's situation. How much money did they have to offer for Tang Wan to sell the cat? That was also a matter of concern to many people. Many children liked Jin Xiaopang, and begged their parents. They wanted that chubby cat. In the end, their parents rejected their demands. 7 million yuan was heart-wrenching, who had that much money to buy a cat? Even if they could buy it, could they keep it in their hands? There were others who felt like they had the financial means to buy it, and they kept trying to get information on Tang Wan. One such person was the second young master from Marquis Keppel's family, Alvin Keppel. The nobles of the Ender Empire, excluding the royal family, ranked from top to bottom. Dukes, marquises, counts, viscounts, and barons. As far as Beta Ursi Minores was concerned, if they were above the rank of marquis, then they were already great nobles. There were only a few families with the title of duke in the entire empire. They were all closely related to the royal family, and their descendants had the right to inherit the title. Most of their children's future partners were members of the royal family. For example, the prince's partner, who had been arranged in childhood, was from Duke Tang's family. They come from 300 years of noble glory. Alvin held a picture of Jin Xiaopeng. The person he wanted to curry favor with was Tang Tinji, the future heir to the duke's family, who was just 16 years old. His older brother had been designated as the wife of the crown prince and lost the right to inherit. The identity of the young master had been established. There were many people at school who fawned over him and wanted to befriend him with ulterior motives. Alvin was one of them. Tang Tinji was only 16 years old with black hair and eyes. His five senses were still unable to shake off their youth. His exquisite androgynous form was irrefutable. He was dressed in a black ceremonial robe, sitting elegantly on the school's highest loft, drinking black tea and reading. The attendant stood behind him silently, as if he were invisible. From this, the profound background and harsh lifestyle of old nobility could be seen. When Alvin saw Tang Tinji, his body tensed. Although he was 2 grades higher than Tang Tinji, who was 2 years younger, he still felt the pressure. But for his own interests, Alvin walked over with a smile and cozied up to him. "Young Master Tang, I found something very interesting." Tang Tinji raised his eyebrows slightly and asked with slight curiosity, "Oh. What is it?" As soon as Alvin saw the other party's interest, he quickly showed him the picture of Jin Xiaopeng. "It's a cat, a cute pet that had disappeared with the ancient earth more than 1,000 years ago. I heard that young Master Tang's ancestors were immigrants from Earth. With an Asian bloodline was pure as yours, you must like it very much." Tang Tinji glanced at it and gave a faint, noncommittal smile. Not a refusal. Alvin's eyes lit up. Sure enough, he liked it. Alvin suddenly thought of getting the cat. Regardless of whether the broadcasting host agreed or not, he had to get the cat. After Alvin left, Tang Tinji shook his head and said disdainfully, "This second young master isn't as good as his older brother, and can't support him." The attendant asked tentatively, "Then, should we let him seek you out in the future?" "It doesn't matter." Tang Tinji said casually. "A wise man needs to use it, and we need to leave a few unintelligent ones. Whether he is pretending to be silly or not can be seen from if he can get the cat. The broadcasting host's identity is very mysterious, and many people couldn't uncover it. So it isn't easy to find the other's identity. It's no concern. It has nothing to do with me." Tang Tinji looked at his book, eyes cold. When Zhong He heard that someone was investigating Tang Wan, he frowned, unhappy. "Who is it? What do they want?" To those who wanted to pursue Tang Wan, the marshal promised to issue a challenge on the Star Network under hundreds of millions of witnesses throughout the empire, saying that he would beat them until even their relatives couldn't recognize them. Although his body hadn't fully recovered yet, even by himself, beating them would be like defeating children. Lin Bo urged him to be calm, their goal isn't Furen, but the cat in his hands. Only then did Zhong He snort, obviously. His partner was so good, and the other party had put all his energy into finding a cat, they were blind and foolish. In short, the marshal wasn't satisfied with any of this. Lin Bo said, "To be honest, if the other party can find it, it would save us a lot of effort. I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to find it." Presently, they still hadn't ascertained Tang Wan's identity. Furen appeared on an abandoned garbage planet. The only people on that planet were criminals, fighting for scraps to eat with their lives. There were often star pirates there, and countless murders took place. And apparently, Furen wasn't from there. I've tested him, he doesn't know how to fight. He couldn't have survived in a place like that. All the nearby planets have been searched, and his origins are still unknown. Zhong He muttered, "No need to look around the planet, directly search through the nobility of Beta Ursi Minoris, from high ranking to low. The only nobles surnamed Tang on Beta Ursi Minoris of pure Asian descent are Duke Tang's family." Lin Bo smiled. Duke Tang only has 3 children. One of them died young, and the blood of the other branches aren't pure. With Furan's black hair and eyes, he can't be from a Tang branch family. Zong he calmly asked, no, don't you think his appearance is like a certain someone's? Who? Zong he's eyes were dark. Tang Furan, who passed away many years ago. I mean Duke Tang's original wife, the daughter of one of the old generals of the Chinese Navy. I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was a child and she gave me a piece of candy. Lin Bo's face slowly sank. If it was true, it would be a big deal and the consequences would be devastating. Tang Wan, who knew nothing about it, spent the night in bed, scrubbing through Weibo. Zong he had gone into the treatment room again, so there was no one to steal the bed from him. Tang Wan was beautiful, happy and relaxed. Seeing that a lot of people knew what transplanting meant, Tang Wan smiled and randomly selected 20 people and sent each 10,000 star coins, adding a congratulations on his Weibo. Congratulations on the following 20 small partners, sending a good luck koi attachment. If you didn't get it, don't be sad, we'll engage in such activities often in the future. As for those who asked about buying his pets, Tang Wan pretended to be blind, jumping past them as if he couldn't see. Fans interacted with Tang Wan on Weibo, leaving a lot of messages. Tang Wan responded successively to dozens of questions, and then sent out on Weibo. Let's cook next time, the food I make is delicious. The comments refused. Every time we see you cook, we lose half our lives from ravenous hunger. Tang Wan was disappointed. Why didn't these people from the future know how to enjoy life? Eating should be a priority. Many fans also asked Tang Wan what he was doing, why wasn't he live broadcasting now? Others broadcasted once a day, spending 3 days fishing and 2 days basking in the sun. Not diligent, not good. Tang Wan fed Xian Feng a melon seed, recorded a video of it and posted it on the internet. He responded to the fans. I'm teaching Xian Feng to speak. If he says it right, I'll give him a melon seed. Fans saw his exposed hand and cried. Please feed him. Please show your face. What on earth do you look like? I don't care what you look like, I want to marry you, little brother asking for marriage. When Tang Wan saw this, he averted his eyes and pretended to be blind. He quickly left the comments. Countless fans flipped the table in anger. When Tang Wan's head finished spinning, a small figure with black and gold fur strolled through the door. His fur was as fluffed up as Zhang Fei's beard, his body covered in dirt, and every step leaving a paw print on the floor. De Zhuang. Tang Wan coldly seized the scruff of his neck, picked him up, and rushed to the bathroom, leaving no time to ask the other how they had gotten there. Where did you go? How did your entire body get covered with dirt? For some ulterior purpose, the marshal who saw that the soil in the garden was good and capriciously rolled in it. Sorry for the later chapter. I was super busy yesterday and could only upload it today. Also we're finally getting a bit more of the original Tang Wan's background. Anyone else got bad vibes from Duke Tang's family? Chapter 15. Is De Zhuang Zong his illegitimate child? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Tang Wan placed De Zhuang in the bathtub and washed the dirty little cat. You're all. Tang Wan was helpless. Why are there leaves? He had bought a special bath milk for cats just for De Zhuang. It prevented fur loss and kept it fluffy and elegant, as well as making it smell of milk. Tang Wan lathered it all over De Zhuang's body. Soak in it for a while, get rid of the smell of dirt on your body. The kitten was obedient, trained to not resist at all. Tang Wan had already been splashed with dirty water and had no choice but to unbutton his clothes. He glanced at the kitten. Why did your parents send you over so late? What are they so busy with every day, disregarding their children? Towards these irresponsible parents, Tang Wan was a little angry. Giving birth but not raising them, might as well not give birth at all. The kitten shook his head and refused to answer the question. Tang Wan simply accepted that he hadn't understood. He had decided that De Zhuang's IQ was lower than normal children's. Tang Wan stripped off his clothes, turned his back toward Zhong He, opened the shower, and washed his body. There was a red crescent moon-shaped birthmark on his shoulder, stamped on his porcelain-white skin. It was very conspicuous. Zhong He glanced at it, then looked down from his shoulder. Finally, he silently twisted his face away, the tips of his ears reddening. Tang Wan saw the other's actions reflected in the mirror and doubtfully raised his eyebrows. De Zhuang, are you still shy? Tang Wan was amused and deliberately teased him, you still know how to be shy, how old are you? Your milk teeth still haven't been drawn back yet. Zhong He looked at his claws and felt that it was too small. It was a little hard to explain. Tang Wan quickly washed himself, dried his body, and wrapped himself in a bathrobe. He scrubbed the kitten clean and intended to hold and blow dry him, but when he picked De Zhuang up, he found that there was something wrong. De Zhuang, did you grow a lot again? Tang Wan suddenly discovered that De Zhuang had grown larger. He used to be a little over 3 kilograms, but now he had to be 5 kilograms. He hadn't seen the other in 2 days, and De Zhuang had grown so much. Tang Wan examined him up and down several times, making sure that it wasn't just fat. He really had grown a little larger. He was surprised, asking, did you swell after inhaling water? Why do you feel so much heavier? Tang Wan was in a hurry when he carried him in, so he hadn't paid any attention to it. Zhong He was silent. He had lost a little control and shifted a little. Fortunately, Tang Wan didn't understand how beastmen shifted. Tang Wan picked up the kitten, gently blew his fur clean, and brushed it down. He smelled the other's milky fragrance and happily rubbed the kitten's head. This is what a cat should look like. Only dogs roll around in the dirt, understand? Zhong He yawned lazily and rubbed his face against Tang Wan's neck. He ripped open his bathrobe with his claws and looked at the birthmark again. His golden eyes narrowed slightly. Sure enough, it was him. The next morning, Tang Wan woke up and found that De Zhuang was no longer there, but Zhong He was draped all over his back like a large cat. He had rested his head on his shoulder and was hugging him tightly from behind. When Tang Wan struggled to turn over, the person behind him held him even tighter. Tang Wan tilted his head and saved Zhong He's beautiful facial features, the tip of his nose almost touching his face, and he could clearly see his long eyelashes. This large cat, as soon as he fell asleep, he would be like a super sticky glutinous cake. Tang Wan couldn't move, so he whispered, Zhong He. Zhong He opened his eyes and looked at Tang Wan, who gradually became anxious. After quietly watching Tang Wan for a few seconds, he leaned over and kissed him. Then he closed his eyes again. Tang Wan. Half a minute later, Tang Wan called out again, Zhong He, wake up. Zhong He was woken up again. He idly rubbed Tang Wan's face and buried his face against Tang Wan's neck. He kissed it 2 more times and nibbled on it. Tang Wan raised his eyebrows. Disgruntled, he pinched Zhong He's waist. He gritted his teeth and asked, are you finished? Zhong He opened his eyes again like a lazy cat with confused eyes. Tang Wan had no choice but to struggle harder. You're crushing me to death. Zhong He buried his face in Tang Wan's shoulder and woke up completely. The arms around Tang Wan relaxed slightly, though they still remained encircled around his waist, unwilling to let go. I'm hungry. The strong breath was coquettish. Tang Wan's heart softened, the big cat was hungry. I'll go make breakfast, what do you want to eat? To tell the truth, the food that the cook made didn't taste very good. The priority was given to nutrition and taste was secondary. Anything is fine, no preference. The marshal felt that he was especially well provided for. Tang Wan suggested. Do you want seafood porridge? No fish fillet, I want shrimp. Tang Wan's mouth twitched. He was picky when he said that anything was fine. An esteemed dumpling. No vegetable stuffing. Meat, 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 you always eat meat. Tang Wan said and rubbed Zhong He's head. After he rubbed, he was stunned. For a moment, he had regarded Zhong He as De Zhuang. They both had the same tastes and were particularly sticky when they weren't fully awake. When he smelled the familiar scent on Zhong He, Tang Wan doubtfully asked, You carry De Zhuang. Zhong He raised his eyebrows and wondered what Tang Wan meant. The best way to deal with it was not to answer. Tang Wan stood up to get dressed. De Zhuang's bath milk is milk-scented, you have a strong milky fragrance. Zhong He faintly hummed. I carried him. Tang Wan was surprised. Actually carrying the cub with Zhong He's temperament, it was too strange. Burying the doubt in his heart, after Tang Wan brushed his teeth and washed his face, he made breakfast. Zhong He followed soon after. Now standing at the kitchen door, he watched Tang Wan bustle about, his eyes slightly narrowed and the corners of his lips quirked up. Tang Wan placed the dumplings in the pot, rubbed his hands, and said, I'm going to make some meat jerky for De Zhuang, fatten him up, and sell him the next time I do a live broadcast. Zhong He's face soured. Tang Wan gave him a wicked grin. I'm playing with you. I've noticed that you're very protective of De Zhuang. Tang Wan looked Zhong He up and down and stared at him suspiciously. And you carried him. Tang Wan had never seen Zhong He carry De Zhuang, but the scent on his body was too strong. Could it be that after he fell asleep, Zhong He had rubbed De Zhuang, who was cute enough to make his heart explode, bald? No matter how he thought about it, there was something odd. Both of your fur colors are very similar. The more Tang Wan thought about it, the odder he felt it was. Zhong He casually said, it's genetics, we're the same species. Tang Wan frowned and accepted the explanation for now. After breakfast, Tang Wan made some jerky. Thinking that the large cat was also still a cat, he packed a box and gave it to Zhong He, who was reading a report in his study. Here, you can chew on it. Zhong He held one between two fingers, tentatively tried it, and nodded. Not bad. Tang Wan smiled and leaned against Zhong He's desk, and confidently said, of course, whatever I make tastes good, guaranteed to keep the stomachs of cats. Zhong He looked at the jerky and said slowly, reportedly, there is a saying that you Asian people have, if you want to capture a man's heart, you must first capture his stomach. Stop eating. Tang Wan's expression was cold. He picked up the box on the table to leave, not going to give Zhong He even one to eat. Let him starve. The corner of the back of his coat was grabbed, and Tang Wan was tugged back. He angrily glared at the person behind him. Could he afford not to use such great strength? Mine. Zhong He rustled Tang Wan's coat, his expression very serious. Tang Wan paused and automatically imagined Zhong He's expression as being the same as when he was a big cat. It was a coquettish look. Tang Wan took a deep breath, knowing that it was wrong to look at Zhong He with a filter like this, but he couldn't resist at all. After he saw Zhong He's beast form, the filter couldn't be removed. Fine, I'll let you eat it then. There's a lot more in the kitchen anyways, and De Zhuang can't eat it all. Tang Wan yielded to the big cat's beauty and put down the jerky. Then, Tang Wan noticed that Zhong He had not been idle for the whole day. He was reading reports and eating. Going for a walk and eating. When he entered the treatment room, his mouth was still moving. When he came out, his hand unconsciously touched his pocket and continued to eat. Tang Wan wondered, the box was so small, how could he be eating for so long? He had a sudden realization, went to the kitchen and looked, stunned. He made 10 boxes, all of them gone. Tang Wan kneaded his head and calmed himself down. He was speechless. Marshal, it seems like a burglar has broken into our kitchen. No, Zhong He took the last box out of the drawer. I took them. Getting a particular happiness from being recognized, male beast men had a natural desire to possess their partners. Zhong He believed that Tang Wan was his and the food that Tang Wan made was also his. Tang Wan snatched it and grumbled, "Leave a mouthful for De Zhuang." Zhong He looked calmly at the angry Tang Wan. Seeing him acting unrestrained, with an "I won't bother with you" expression, he gave him a forgiving look. Tang Wan felt that no matter what he said to Zhong he would be making trouble out of nothing. He had no choice but to carry the box away, anger unable to rise. Tang Wan persuaded himself in his heart. If he hadn't, then Zhong he would keep on doing it. Could he still leave? What reasons would he have for divorce? Write about how much his partner ate. In the afternoon, after De Zhuang was released from school, he was sent back by his family. Tang Wan held the little fur ball and happily took out the jerky. "Zhuang, do you have a school bag? You can bring what you don't finish today home, or your cousin will eat them all for you." The kitten in his arms was silent. He jumped onto the table with the jerky and ate quietly while Tang Wan brushed his fur. It was messy every time, but long fur was good looking. It took time to maintain a high level appearance. After the kitten had eaten a piece and licked his mouth, Tang Wan turned his head and asked, "Do you want to drink water?" The kitten nodded, sitting on the table and waiting elegantly. Tang Wan rubbed a hand on his head, put down the brush, and poured some water. "When I get old, you must remember that when you were a child, I raised you like this. You must also pour me a glass of water to drink." The kitten wiggled his tail, not refusing. Tang Wan took it as his agreement. When Tang Wan came back from pouring the water, he found that the table was covered with debris and that the entire box of jerky had been eaten up, the little fellow's belly bulging. Tang Wan was shocked. "How did you eat it this quickly? The meat is bigger than your stomach." Tang Wan quickly pushed De Zhuang down and touched his belly. "Are you okay? Does it hurt? Does your stomach ache? Are you worried? Will you have diarrhea? Why are you as good for nothing as your cousin?" Zhong he gritted his teeth. Good for nothing. Speaking of cousins, Tang Wan was also stunned. "You call Zhong he your cousin, you can't be royalty. That's not correct." From what he saw online, the prince was 20 years old, the second prince was 16 years old, and neither had such a small child. Where on earth had this nephew come from? In the past, he had wanted to leave and didn't want to remain here to live out his days, so Tang Wan never thought about it. Now that his mentality was different, he thought more freely. Whose child was De Zhuang? Why did he look so similar to Zhong He? And Zhong He still secretly carried him. Tang Wan frowned. He really hadn't been an adoptive father to De Zhuang. Zhong He found that the look in Tang Wan's eyes was wrong but couldn't figure out what it meant. He reassuringly patted Tang Wan's face with his paws. "Relax, he wouldn't eat himself to death." Tang Wan rubbed the kitten's head, but there was a bit of an odd feeling in his heart. If he went to ask, it would seem like he cared a lot about Zhong He's past when he was the one who stirred up a lot of noise about a divorce. In the evening, Tang Wan strolled around the garden path with De Zhuang in his arms. He came to his usual table and placed De Zhuang on top of it. He swung De Zhuang's arms. "You really grew larger. In a bit, I won't be able to carry you." Lin Bo laughed and said, "Tigers grow fast." The young master was also small when he was a child, and then he grew quickly. It was soon after that I couldn't carry him anymore. Zhong He's face twisted and he flattened his ears. He didn't want to hear what had happened when he was a child. Tang Wan was interested and asked, "He was also this small when he was a child?" "Yes." Lin Bo replied. "The young master is a mix of human and beast man, and his genes mutated. When he was young, he was very different from the normal beautiful tigers. At the time, they thought that he wouldn't be able to survive. In kindergarten, he was often provoked by the older cubs, but they didn't win. Tang Wan asked again, why? Lin Bo hummed proudly, because they weren't as fierce as the young master. My family's young master dared to use his claws. Tang Wan raised his eyebrows. The marshal was fierce from young till now. Unexpectedly, after he was 3.5 years old, he grew very fast, and 6 months later, he was the strongest child in the entire royal kindergarten. Tang Wan laughed, and then the cubs who provoked the young master were beaten into dogs. Cough, they all became the younger brothers of the young master. Lin Bo looked serious, as if the one who has said that the royal cubs were dogs wasn't him. Tang Wan was amused and brushed away 2 stray strands of fur on De Zhuang's body. Zhuang, are you the weakest cub in your kindergarten? Is anyone bullying you? Zhong He impatiently shook his tail. Don't mention his childhood follies. Tang Wan smiled and asked Lin Bo, does De Zhuang have a genetic mutation like Zhong He? How are they so similar? Zhong He's ears quivered, but his tail didn't shake. His intuition told him that if he didn't answer properly, he would be in danger. The author has something to say. Zhong He. Wife, you calm down, I am innocent. I would never stray before marriage. De Zhuang is Zhong He's illegitimate child +1 for all, and he lost control of his cat form after seeing Tang Tang naked. Chapter 16. Drinking vinegar until even he was afraid. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous. Although Tang Wan's tone and expression remained the same, Lin Bo saw Zhong He's subtle performance and explained seriously, yes, they are close relatives, especially close. It's closely related to the royal family's secrets. Tang Wan was slightly startled. Royal secrets. Lin Bo looked at Zhong He's claws, which secretly hinted at him. He stiffly pointed in the palace's directions, following the claws. Throughout the empire, the only one who dared to habitually find His Majesty to replace his own black pot would be his family's marshal. Tang Wan's heart skipped a beat. Heavens, was De Zhuang His Majesty's illegitimate son? So he and Zhong He were really closely related by blood. Looking at De Zhuang's expression again, Tang Wan had a little sympathy. It was no wonder that he had never seen the child's parents. How innocent children are, it would only be correct to say that the ones in the wrong were the adults. Having never seen them before, Tang Wan marked in times on the top of His Majesty's head. Zhong He's big cousin was a scum. His wife had already given him 2 children, and he still had the face to cheat. From De Zhuang's age, 3 years old wasn't big. The more Tang Wan thought about it, the more he felt that His Majesty was a scumbag. Zhong He wagged his tail and gave Lin Bo an admiring look when he saw that Tang Wan's expression changed. From his expression, he knew that the crisis was over. The marshal, who had a strong desire to survive, had no idea what he had just experienced, or why Tang Wan's expression had shifted. In the face of a crisis, he relied on his instincts and swung his claws. In this way, as the days passed, he could still be very pleased with himself. As for whether or not his cousin the emperor wanted to carry the pot back, he didn't care what the consequences would be. Tang Wan patted De Zhuang's head with pity, but he still had some doubts in his heart. Zhong He's royal genes were too strong. De Zhuang was simply carved from Zhong He's image. Lin Bo came over and interrupted Tang Wan's thoughts. I see that the number of fans on your Weibo has already exceeded billions. There are so many people who are interested in Earth's creatures. Tang Wan smiled, the curve of his lips cold and thin. People value what they have lost. Lin Bo sat across from Tang Wan and said kindly, young man, you seem to talk as if you can see through the fickleness of human relationships. You seem older than this old man. Tang Wan said, embarrassed, how can I compare with you? You have traveled more bridges than I have. Lin Bo was distressed, for he must have suffered a lot before. Tang Wan shrugged indifferently. I don't know, my memories are gone. The only thing I knew was that I was called Tang Wan. He didn't have the original's memories. What had happened had already passed. Anyways, they had the same name and they were both bitter people. To live, they had to look ahead and go where they want to go. Lin Bo nodded. That is to say, the name you're using might not be real either. Can you show me your terminal? Tang Wan took it off and handed it over without hesitation. Lin Bo observed, this terminal is still new. According to the degree of wear and tear, it should have been bought about half a year before your accident, that is, 1.5 years ago. There is no personal data on it at all, obviously deliberately erased. It can't even access the star network. You must not have been an ordinary person. Tang Wan was calm but indifferent. Does F#K16K, our hashtag KR9, and want to know his origins? It doesn't matter, I'm doing well now. Knowing my origins wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. Lin Bo was relieved. Yes, it doesn't matter what status you used to be, you will always be my family's Furen. Tang Wan wondered, Furen. He eyed the kitten on the table. You called him young master before. Lin Bo supported his forehead, saying, oh, I forgot my young master has grown up, and now he's a marshal. I'm old and my memory is getting bad, I have something to do, I'll go first. The old man stood up, his back weathered, but his pace fast. Tang Wan didn't see how his legs moved, but in the twinkling of an eye, he went more than 20 meters. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lin Bo, be more careful. He had just casually asked, why would he run away? The next morning, Tang Wan fed the koi. He saw that the sunshine was just right, and the lawn on the other side was wide enough. Should he let the alpaca out for a walk? Zone he was dressed in a military uniform, as if he wanted to go out. He saw Tang Wan crouching by the pool and reminded him, stay a little further away. What if your legs fall in, you fall into the pond, and become fish food? Tang Wan turned a blind eye and waved his hands without turning back. Quickly go. Zone he clicked his tongue. When he crawled out of bed and didn't see anyone, wasn't it last night that Tang Wan had brushed out the fur on his neck and fell asleep without letting go of him? Tang Wan kneeled by the pool, opened the system, and bought 6 more lop-eared rabbits. The little rabbits stayed by Tang Wan's feet. So small, truly Meng. Tang Wan touched them 2 at a time, too cute. Zone he stood nearby and looked coldly at Tang Wan petting the rabbits. System prompt. 6 new rabbits were detected. There isn't enough rabbit, buy more now. Tang Wan bought it directly, buy more. Come, 100 more kilograms. The small rabbits were carried over to the lawn, and the big rabbit was released as well. Then he felt that these rabbits were too cute, but a little lonely. He bought a few more black and white Dutch rabbits and countryside white rabbits. Tang Wan held them and rubbed them one by one, so cute Luo Bei had been raised by Tang Wan since childhood and was the closest to him. When it was young, it would only eat food and do nothing else. Other rabbits played by themselves and also held on to Tang Wan's legs, blinking their bright eyes and looking pitifully at Tang Wan. Tang Wan could understand them at a glance. Do you want to eat carrots? Another carrot. Rabbits that only ate vegetables for a long period of time were prone to enteritis. The appropriate way to feed them would be that until they reached 6 months old, to give them an adequate amount of alfalfa, an unlimited amount of timothy hay, rabbit food, and boiled, cooled water. After they were 6 months old, they could be fed unlimited timothy hay, rabbit food, boiled water, and a small amount of fruits and vegetables. The vegetables must be free of water. But for a strong rabbit like Luo Bei, it wouldn't be a problem to give him a carrot. Luo Bei had deduced 100 ways to act coquettishly on the spot. He placed his head on Tang Wan's calf, lingering and refusing to go. It had long surpassed the normal size of lop-eared rabbits, reaching the same size as a countryside rabbit. For the sake of carrots, the 10-kilogram lop-eared rabbit abandoned an adult rabbit's reserved behavior and coquettishly sold Meng. Tang Wan was soft-hearted and hugged it in his arms. "Aya, Xiao Bao Bei, you're too spoiled. If you wait a bit until I'm not busy and I'll cut some carrots for you." Zhong He grumpily glared at Luo Bei, frightening him into shrinking his neck back. Tang Wan turned his head around and asked, "Why haven't you left yet?" Zhong He answered with a cold expression, "I'm waiting for Vice Administrator Chen to come pick me up." Tang Wan and didn't hear the complaints in the other's tone. He felt that the two hamsters were too lonely and bought 5 more. Now, the yard was full of fur. He also let Xian Feng out for some exercise. Realizing that Zhong He still hadn't left yet, Tang Wan pointed at several hamsters. "You really won't try catching one? A cat that can't catch a few hamsters isn't a good cat." Zhong He looked at them with disgust, turned away, and left. Tang Wan forced down his laughter. "Take care of your safety on the road." 2 minutes later, a black and gold furball darted over like an arrow from out of nowhere. Tang Wan was startled and quickly pulled the hamsters into his arms. When a cat saw hamsters, they wouldn't be able to control its claws. The next second, however, he saw De Zhuang pounce directly at Luo Bei and slap the larger rabbit to the ground. Tang Wan shouted, "Luo Bei! De Zhuang, stop! It's a rabbit, not a hamster." Zhong He chain hit with his claws multiple times. The one who beat him was the rabbit. Pest of the people, disgrace of the empire. Scoundrel who hugs the thighs of other people's wives. Tang Wan was already confused. What had aggravated De Zhuang? Xian Feng covered its eyes with its wings and feigned being unable to bear to look at it. Its foul mouth blabbered, "Dying. Dying. Dying." Luo Bei was beaten up and naturally wanted to seek comfort from Tang Wan. Zhong He gritted his teeth and frightened Luo Bei into running away and hiding within a group of other rabbits. With his large size, all the other rabbits huddled around him and stared wide-eyed at this Godzilla of a rabbit. Their faces were filled with reverence towards their new boss. Zhong He turned his head, and walked away. Act spoiled once, get hit once. Tang Wan called out a few times for him but he didn't return. Regardless, he ran to see Luo Bei, his heart distressed. De Zhuang could have mistaken you for a large mouse. This milk cat's eyes aren't good, not even able to recognize a mouse. Luo Bei shrank down, quietly looking in the direction that Zhong He had departed in. He laid down on the ground with his head in his arms and didn't dare act spoiled. Tang Wan could only give Luo Bei a carrot to comfort him. After giving the fur babies some exercise, Tang Wan put them back and prepared to do a live broadcast in the afternoon. After purchasing the animals, they could be put back. This system function made Tang Wan very satisfied. Not only did it save him the trouble of feeding, giving them water and scooping their excrement, it also told him the health and mood of the Meng pets. In fact, it was unrealistic for a person to have too many pets from different species because they needed different living environments and had to consider the issue of the pets competing for territory. For example, lop-eared rabbits disliked dampness and liked cleanliness. While raising it, it should be given a dry and clean environment, and the rabbit cages should be cleaned weekly. Lop-eared rabbits were also timid, easily frightened, and their breeding environment should be quiet and comfortable. Hamsters needed their pads and ventilated cleaned every day. They weren't accustomed to strong light and ground their teeth every day. There was even less to be said about cats. Once they saw a mouse, they would want to beat it, like De Zhuang had. Even rabbits would be beaten. The system not only could assign them to different environments, but could also buy food and add it in with a press of a button. There was also a one-click cleaning function. When there would be a problem with the pets, it would automatically remind him of how many pets it would be convenient to keep. Tang Wan wasn't afraid of drawing people's attention with too many pets now. Zhong He said that he would protect him, and Tang Wan would gamble on it. He would trust him once, would let go of the restraints on his hands and feet. He'd buy and raise raise, and he'd set zong he on whoever dared to cause trouble. After ordering a shipment of small bowls online, Tang Wan went to the kitchen to prepare a meal for the fur babies. He had planned to broadcast a live mealtime in the afternoon. He'd broadcast rabbits, cats, hamsters, and an alpaca. It was the first time he would broadcast so many of the pets together. Tang Wan had noticed that what the audience wanted most was to see them. If they enjoyed it, then he would get more rewards. Even if he didn't get a lot, Tang Wan wouldn't suffer. What he wanted was popularity. If his popularity was high, the advertising fees alone would be enough for him to feed himself. When Lin Bo looked at Tang Wan moving about, seeing like had something big to do, he asked, "Furan, do you need any help?" Tang Wan thought for a moment. "Lin Bo, can I keep pets in a pen on the grass lawn?" Lin Bo laughed and said, "Why not? This is your home, you can put a pen wherever you want to. If you want to change the terrain, you can also do that. There are mountains behind us. If you raise leopards, you can raise them there." Tang Wan smiled, showing his dimples. What words could be more reliable than those? 2 hours later, someone brought over the things that Tang Wan had bought. A servant commanded a robot and closed off an area of the grass lawn that Tang Wan had wanted. When Tang Wan went out to take a look, he was in a good mood. He released the alpaca and bought a pony and a mini donkey, spending all of the points that he had accumulated from the live broadcasts. The two newcomers were shy and didn't know what was going on. They cautiously walked around in small steps, looking here and sniffing there. The alpaca was different. The moment it came out and took a look, it took it as its own territory. It had never seen such a large patch of grass before, joy bursting from within. After excitedly playing around, it rushed towards Tang Wan. The corner of Tang Wan's lips lifted. Knowing what the bear child wanted to do, he immediately turned and started running away. Listening to the gust of wind behind him, a tue sound followed closely behind. There was a cool feeling on the back of Tang Wan's neck, and his expression darkened. Damn it. Which family had raised this silly child? The author has something to say. Sitting at home, His Majesty who had received a pot from the sky. Wife, listen to my explanation _zong he's jealousy strikes again. Chapter 17. If he won't hand over the cat, then I won't let him go on. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callus the alpaca's name was Shenju Gu. Why add Gu? It's because if they characterized his personality, it would be like a street gangster. With a slicked back hairstyle, as soon as he was upset, it would freely puff up. Whoever he saw, he'd spit on, giving them a face full of saliva. If it weren't for its good looks, Tang Wan could definitely smack it 8 times a day. It was spitting again. Tang Wan picked up his stick and smacked it against a rock, frightening the alpaca. If you spit again, I'll smack you like this. Understand? Shenju Gu shrank back in fear and didn't dare to stroll about freely. Tang Wan pointed at the ground with his stick. If you can't control yourself, you can spit on the ground. Understand? Tue. Shenju Gu obediently tue on the ground to show that he had learned to be honest under the stick's authority. Tang Wan tossed the stick away and angrily stomped towards the bathroom. This bastard. Xian Feng foolishly rose behind them. Stupid hit. Stupid hit. Shenju Gu behaved, watching Tang Wan's shadow gradually fade away. In a second, it ran towards the pony and the mini donkey, following and circling around them, then running ahead. It took 2 loops and ran back, obviously asking them to play with it. Run. The pony and mini donkey were still walking slowly with small steps, casually eating grass. It seemed that they were too lazy to deal with this fool. When Tang Wan came out from his bath, Shenju Ji's hairstyle had collapsed, its disheveled hair covering its face, and unable to see at all. Several servants and guards were taking pictures. Perhaps they had never seen such a silly pet. This fool thought that it was very beautiful. Having made a fool of itself, it crowded against the group of people. With that mouth shape, it seemed like it wanted to toy. But he had just been taught and wasn't brave enough to toy again. In short, he wasn't allowed to act like a fool. Tang Wan coughed, and Shenju Gu immediately came back to please him, the hair covering his eyes being tossed about. Tang Wan held his forehead. He was afraid that he had raised a fool. Since he raised Shenju Gu, he didn't dare to raise a husky. Tang Wan patted the fool's head and helplessly said, "I'll change your hairstyle later." There were servants and guards in the home, and Tang Wan hadn't put the pets away, letting them wander in the yard. After he ate lunch, Tang Wan posted on his Weibo. "I moved to a new house, it's a big place. I let the fur babies out for air and I'm broadcasting exactly at 1.30. When Tang Wan went online, the audience who had been waiting for a long time were dumbfounded. The place really was big enough. Tang Wan used outdoor cameras, which were directly lifted up and placed over the lawn. With just a look, Tang Wan could control the cameras. It was very convenient to use them. In order to see where the pets were going, Tang Wan took a panoramic view of the enclosed lawn. After a couple seconds of silence, exclamation marks came up in rows. "So big. It isn't the ordinary kind of big. Your family is so rich. No wonder you won't glance at 7 million. Even in a remote place on Beta Ursi Minoris, a home with such a large lawn would be worth billions. Upstairs, don't be excited. Maybe it's a third-class planet. The land on a third-class planet isn't so expensive." With this person's words, everyone calmed down. Right, he wasn't necessarily on #K3K2, Ursi Minoris, he might be on a third-class planet. But it wasn't cheap to buy such a large plot of land on a third-class planet either. Looking at it that way, their host really was rich. Tang Wan looked up at the palace, which he could see with the naked eye, and calculated how close his home was. Wouldn't the land be more expensive? Too lazy to struggle with the problem, Tang Wan clapped his hands and said to everyone, "Recently, I seem to have gained more spiritual strength. Now, I not only can summon one species, but I can summon many more." First up to appear is the Rabbit Heavenly Regiment, led by Luo Bei. Without his natural enemy, Luo Bei and his little rabbit brothers sauntered onto the lawn and received a round of applause. Tang Wan introduced the rabbits to the audience: Dutch rabbits, countryside rabbits, lop-eared rabbits, their breeds can be determined from their appearance. Their names are also very good. Luo Bei, coriander, bean curd, cucumber, beans. The audience was dumbfounded at all of the rabbits' names being vegetable names, but couldn't control themselves, feeling the fur of the ancient Earth's rabbits. Not only did they pet them themselves, they also called their friends to come. Petting rabbits was like petting cats, they couldn't stop petting at all, they still wanted to do it. Of course, there were so many rabbits and the audience was curious, asking, "Tang Tang, can you remember their names by yourself?" Of course. Tang Wan tapped open the system, checking out that animals that he had bought. Every entry had a name on top, clear as day. The comments were a wave of kneeling to the big boss emoticons, admiring Tang Wan's memory. The one who could remember all of the vegetable names would be their big boss. Some people were very curious. "Tang Tang, if your spiritual strength very high. We've never heard of a person summoning so many living things at once." Tang Wan touched his chin. He wondered if he'd be too conspicuous. Would it give Zhong He more trouble? He hastened to say modestly, "I've never thought about it before, but what I summon can't be used in battle, they can only sell Meng. It shouldn't take too much spiritual strength." The type of comments changed. "You grow a little heart ba. Haha. I see you foolishly keeping quiet. Are you stupid? It has nothing to do with fighting. Quickly test your spiritual strength. If you reach A. level, you can get a lot of benefits. I'm sorry everyone, I'm taking my blue friend back home to educate him. Tang Wan was embarrassed. Had he said something wrong? Okay, skipping this topic. Tang Wan stiffly changed the subject. Next, let's look at the hamster babies. They don't like strong light, so I built them a small shed. Tang Wan pointed towards the virtual screen and pulled out a window. The previous one had only shot rabbits and this one shot hamsters. The audience could choose for themselves. They're de Mao, Air Mao, San Man, Si Mao, Wu Mao, Lu Mao, Chi Mao. The audience all understood his routine and said, "You don't need to introduce them, we understand. However many hamsters there are would be how many Maos there are. How round, how chubby. The hamsters are raised well, and their fur is smooth. They're really amazing, there's a lot of stuff in their mouth. How awesome. Cute. Just the names aren't good, Daddy Tang really doesn't want to change their names. Tang Wan. Isn't it especially good? The babies with these names are well raised." The audience was too lazy to argue. Okay. It's whatever you say. There were still people saying. Want to see De Zhuang? Begging De Zhuang to come out. De Zhuang went to school. My family's little nephew has gotten big and wants to go out to temper himself. Ah, it's empty and lonely. I'll let Xian Feng come out and say hello to everyone. Tang Wan also felt that after he spoke, he was also happy, but he inexplicably felt that Xian Feng had been sent to fill up his phone bill. Xian Feng's mouth ran as it came out, "Little sister, a mua." At first, the audience all thought that Tang Wan was a local tyrant and that it didn't matter whether or not they gave a reward. Now they were all excited and it truly didn't matter. They all threw gifts. Buy candy for Xian Feng to eat. Eat, Xian Feng. Buy melon seeds. Buy food for De Mao. Buy Luo Bei carrots. Tang Wan looked at it, squinting. Today, I'll introduce you to two new friends, the pony and the mini donkey. They haven't been named yet. The studio was quiet, curiously watching the new species, daring to tentatively reach out and touch them. Someone asked. Is this pony the ancestor of the giant pony? Tang Wan nodded, correct. Their bodies are 3 meters tall and one kick from a giant pony can break a wall. They grew like this when they were on Earth. The audience didn't know what to say. Good Meng pets grew up to be like this, the fixed point was too wicked. Well, I've already come up with names for them. Tang Wan said solemnly, interrupting everyone's thoughts. The pony is called Iron Pillar and the mini donkey is called Air Hay. Audience. Will you change the names if we struggle? Tang Wan refused. Of course I won't. Audience. Okay then, as long as Xiao Gij is happy. Tang Wan was very satisfied with these two names. He let Iron Pillar and Air Hay play by themselves and called over Shenju Gu. He let everyone see its hairstyle, leading to a barrage of ha-ha-ha-ha-s. They all became little monsters eating ha-ha eggs, and nothing else on the screen could be seen. Tang Wan also gave it a cold shoulder, combing Shenju Ji's hair. Let's change the hairstyle. What about a small braid? The audience let out another wave of ha-ha-ha-ha-s, the screen awash with gifts, all to buy a hair tie for Shenju Gu. 5 minutes later, 2 alpacas were happily running on the lawn, their hearts filled like an ocean, waves flying. Looking at them, Tang Wan was also a bit happy, but only wanted to curse out. Which village did the silly girl run out from? He took a picture to give to Zhong He to look at. But after he took the picture, he noticed that he didn't have his communications number. They had been married for over a year and now slept in the same bed, but he didn't even know his partner's communications number. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not many others would be able to do things to the extent that they did. At this time, there were people sending waves of comments wildly. Hire you to work as a pet manager in my house, sincerely hire. With annual salary of 10 million, you can do whatever you want to do and can broadcast every day. The comments were peaceful for a while, but after continuing adding on 700,000, there was another one pitching an additional 10 million. If it was true, normal people's interest would be piqued. Tang Wan apologized, "Sorry, I can't do that. I haven't been to school and my health isn't good. I'm weak, helpless, and pitiful. My relative's not in good health, he needs a wheelchair to get around. He can barely walk 2 steps and needs treatment every day. I need to take care of him." At this time, Zhong He, who has just finished his military affairs, rushed home. Listening to this as soon as he got off the plane, his expression soured. Who was weak, helpless, and pitiful? Who had to get around in a wheelchair? Who could only walk 2 steps and suffered? When Tang Wan heard the movement behind him and went all out to appease the other. Marshal Darren should open an aircraft carrier in his belly. You can't get angry at everything. Zhong He was equally serious. No, I have a small stomach and eat little. An aircraft carrier can't fly. Tang Wan. At this time in the Marquis mansion, a middle-aged man in a housekeeper's outfit apologetically reported to the young master. "Young master, the host said that he can't come." The young master's expression chilled and he slammed his hands on the table. "Find out where he lives and go talk to him. I must get that cat. If he doesn't come, we'll just take his cat and not let him go on." And Tang's naming sense strikes again, carat omega carat. Chapter 18. Sensual Big Cat, Acting Spoiled Online. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Tang Wan hadn't expected Zhong He to be so narrow-minded. He had heard the other's footsteps and was teasing him. This person was too forceful. Tang Wan wasn't allowed to say that he was weak. Zhong He's expression was clearly unhappy. Tang Wan laughed, and the other became even unhappier. So narrow-minded, small as the tip of a needle. With another look at the internet, the fans dearly loved Tang Wan and bombarded him with rewards. Take care of your health and buy some more good food. Tang was so pitiful, his skinny body was unacceptable. So Tang really has a partner and he wasn't in good health. Alas, it's a pity that he can't marry again. Well, it's not necessarily his partner, it might be a family member. Giving money for you to buy meat to eat, Tang jia you. Attend to your relative well, buy more medicine. Tang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These people really were cute. He wasn't lying at all, but he didn't live off of the help of the fans. He didn't want to make money off of a tragic situation. Zhong He became even angrier when he saw the flood of words. They gave money for him to see a doctor. How weak was he? Tang Wan earnestly and sincerely soothed the fur of his family's big cat, stretching his wrists out for the other to see. They sympathized with me for my poor health. I said I was weak, helpless, and pitiful. At this moment, the comments came forward in a fresh wave. Buy some medicine for your relative. Hope your legs get better soon. What a pity it is to be in a wheelchair, gifting you with a luxury house. Zhong He looked at Tang Wan in grievance without saying a word, expressing his anger with his eyes. This also made Tang Wan feel rather resentful. The other side was like this, he felt that his back was sore. This really was a pot from the sky, making it seem like he had said a lot of bad things behind Zhong He's back. He swore that he really didn't say that much. At the moment, they were still going live and the audience saw Tang Wan turning and around and speaking. Tang Wan also couldn't explain it and he looked pitifully at Zhong He. I was wrong, I'll admit it. Zhong He took a sharp inhale and left, completely unable to bear his partner's coquettish eyes. At the end of the live broadcast, Tang Wan released so many pictures of the Meng pets that they had been made into albums that they posted on the internet, gaining many clicks. At the time, there were people who wondered, if they combined all of Tang Wan's live videos into an album and published it to a video site, wouldn't they gain even more clicks? Therefore, some people used private messages to poke Tang Wan, wanting authorization. Unfortunately, Tang Wan was a host who didn't accept private messages. The only way he could be contacted was by leaving messages in his live broadcasting studio, and then Tang Wan would contact them. For the interested party to negotiate, then they'd have to wait until his next broadcast. How long would they wait until? He's so lazy. Besides, if they sent him a message, what if he pretended that he hadn't seen it? As a result, Tang Wan was at bed by the Star Network Media's official website. The other party had directly asked, "Can we sign a contract to sell the copyright of the video to us?" As soon as the news came out, many of Tang Wan's fans rallied together. "Won't sell. Does it cost money to watch the live broadcast if it is sold? We poor students just want to watch, we don't have money for you to take." Scholars studying paleontology say. Poor. The officials were dumbfounded. Because Tang Wan is at the top of the live broadcasting circle, the amount of rewards he received should be in the top 3. His fans were so powerful, how were they all poor? To be honest, the number of poor fans weren't small, many of them were students interested in paleontology and scholars who researched this kind of data. Tang Wan had more rewards because he had more fans, and with 1 star coin per person, he could make a lot of money overnight. For others, they had to pay an admission fee when they enter the live broadcasting studio, which was the host's source of income. Tang Wan had also considered taking that road in the beginning, but then realized that what he needed was popularity, so he gave up. When Tang Wan saw the news, he quickly responded to the other. "Sorry, I don't have any plans for it for the time being. If I do become interested, I will give priority to your site." Tang Wan had also considered the fans' unwillingness to buy it if the copyright was sold. They were used to seeing it for free, and rewarded depended on their mood. Once they were forced to buy it, there would be a drop in the mood. It would also reduce his popularity. At the moment, his popularity was the most important and making money came second. As soon as his Weibo came out, many in the entertainment network's red circle commented in the back. "What connections does this eating, sleeping, and scolding de Zhuang have? He doesn't care about money at all. Or he's a wealthy idiot who doesn't want to make a profit, what a fool." Alvin, the second young master of Marquis Keppel's family, naturally sneered at all this. Could his connection be as powerful as a marquis? At best, they'd be a wealthy businessman. How many nobles would let their own partners expose themselves to the public to this degree, allowing them to entertain an audience and seek their appreciation like an actor? Wouldn't the noble's face be gone? Check, keep on checking. I don't believe that I can't contact him. Once the young master gave the absolute order, the housekeeper could only draw on their manpower and material resources to track down Tang Wan's information. It took a lot of effort for them to find an Imperial Star Network official to check Tang Wan's ID, but the result was that it couldn't be found. When Alvin heard the news, he didn't retreat at all. How can they not find it? They just don't want to check it, that's all. Go give a gift, pack some money. I won't believe it. Who dares to not give the Marquis face? The housekeeper frowned. The Marquis had always been considering his 2 children. Because the first young master and the second young master were twins, they were the same age, so the heir couldn't depend on that. The Marquis meant to watch them fight and encourage them to compete. He could understand that the second young master was trying to please young Master Tang for a boost for his family's future. In this way, his chances of winning as the Marquis' successor would be greater. But it was a little risky to do so without knowing all of the host's information. The housekeeper advised, "Young master, I think it would be better to discuss this with the Marquis." Alvin frowned in disgust. "No need. My father said to let the younger generation deal with their own affairs and not to bother our elders. It's just an internet star, would the truly powerful nobles go sell their faces? The housekeeper bowed his head. Then I will listen to the young master. Alvin grit his teeth and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He had grown up under the pressure of his twin brother. Everyone said that his brother was the heir, but he wasn't convinced. The other had just come out of the womb a minute earlier than him. Why did they have to add the word second in front of young master? Alvin was also very cruel this time. No matter how much he tossed about, he had to take young Master Tang's vessel and get rid of his older brother. However, Tang Wan's identity was a mystery. The housekeeper poured a lot of thought into it and finally found someone to check Tang Wan's private information on the Star Network. Apart from his name and age, all the other results were the same. Access restricted. Even the identity of his partner was access restricted. The housekeeper finally understood that this Meng pet blogger wasn't an ordinary person. He could protect his identity so well so that the average noble couldn't find or check it. To be able to reach the position of the housekeeper of the Marquis mansion, he naturally wasn't an idiot. Unfortunately, Alvin didn't listen to him at all. Since we can't contact him, we won't let him go on. At that time, he would naturally not come. You don't have to worry about what would happen in the future. Truthfully, Alvin didn't believe the housekeeper much either. He seemed to be on his side for now, but if he went to his elder brother later, it would just be an obstacle for him. When the housekeeper heard this, he expressionlessly bowed his head, silently sneering as he lowered his eyes. Then I will draw back and leave the matter to the young master. Late at night, it suddenly began to rain. Beta Ursae Minoris was warm all year round, like spring. When the rain fell, the temperature fell more than 10 degrees. Tang Wan's entire body was curled up in quilts and entangled in a nightmare. His thoughts were muddled, innumerable, inexplicable thoughts swirling through his mind so he couldn't wake up even when he wanted to. In the darkness, a pair of malicious eyes were staring back at him. He knew that they were a woman's eyes. Why did you eat so little today? Feed it to him, he must eat it up. They might think I'm abusing him. Don't let him out today, he's not in good health. He needs to rest and can't have any visitors. Why were you locked up? Ah, that's because you are a waste, a disgrace to the family. From now on, you are dead and you can't appear in front of people. For the family's honor, this is the sacrifice you have to make. Tang Wan felt that he was in a dark space, narrow and dim without sunlight. It was even more terrible in the dark of the night. He could often hear the howling of the beast next door. He was terrified and knocked on the door. There was no movement outside. He wanted to open the window, but it had been nailed down. Tang Wan was panic-stricken, crying and banging against the door. The nails were rusted with blood. At this time, a tender voice whispered from the other side of the door, "Brother, wait for me to come back. I'll go look for grandfather, I will come back to save you." A little hope had just been raised, but suddenly there was a noise outside of the door and the cries of a child. An older man's frigid voice rang out, who was watching over the young master. Letting him run around on a rainy night, pull that servant to the back mountains and bury them. No, the child's tender voice echoed in the rainy night, followed only by a muffled whimper. Xiao Yi. Tang Wan jolted and sat up, Zhong He sitting beside him and looking at him with a worried face. Tang Wan blinked, his sight gradually returning. He saw the room's dim light and heard the rain outside of the window, the line between his dream and reality still blurred. His heart had almost jumped out and it felt stuffy and painful, as if it had been gripped by a hand. In the next second, he was embraced. Tang Wan felt the warmth and took a deep breath. It relieved the pain in his heart a little, only to find himself scared into a cold sweat. Zhong He. I'm here. Zhong He soothed, stroking Tang Wan's back. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Tang Wan kneaded his head, the pain causing a dull buzz and making him feel a little sick. I had a nightmare, it scared me to death. Zhong He pulled him closer, it's all right, it's not real. I dreamed about a child. Dreams aren't real. Tang Wan laughed weakly. Yes, they were all fake. The marshal didn't really know how to comfort anyone. He turned on the dim light and clearly saw the room. With the person around him, Tang Wan felt a little more comfortable. I want to sleep with the lights on. Zhong He lovingly touched Tang Wan's forehead, brushing away the sweat. Without another word, he transformed into a beast, pulling Tang Wan into his arms. I'll keep watch while you sleep so you won't be afraid. Tang Wan petted the cat's neck. His entire body was nestled in the cat's arms and pressed against his belly, his head pillowed on one of his front legs. Tang Wan relaxed. Zhong He, the undefeated god of war, was beside him, and there was an unusual sense of safety in his heart. Thank you. This time, he spoke with a sincerity he never had before. Zhong He rubbed his chin against Tang Wan's forehead, pulled the quilt over and wrapped them up. He watched him close his eyes, ensuring that he had been asleep for a long time before he shut his own eyes. We finally get a little more on the original's backstory, degree Omega degree, on the chapter title. Aside from meaning big cat, can also be a way of calling someone cute, so an alternate title can be sensual and cute, acting spoiled online. A side note. If you notice any errors in the chapters, whether it be this one or past/future chapters, please DM me on Discord. I can get those in much quicker because I get notifications for them, as opposed to just checking the chapter comments, which I can do much less frequently. Or post it to CG's #typos.and.mistakes Discord channel and ping me. Thank you. Chapter 19. Is there a problem with De Zhuang's growth? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker. In the morning, Tang Wan was once again being pressed down, short of breath. He could feel fur all over his body, a warm touch surrounding him. He subconsciously pushed, but the other didn't move at all. He kicked out with his feet, but it was still useless. Reaching the end of his patience, Tang Wan opened his eyes and jolted, stunned. A tiger's head was very close to him, his mouth clinging to his neck and sleeping soundly. Tang Wan himself was about to be crushed by the large cat. While Zhong He was asleep, Tang Wan went against the pressure and silently appreciated the other's face value for 30 seconds. Then he leaned over to nibble on the big cat's nose. Zhong He was bitten and woke up. He raised his eyebrows, cold words on the tip of his tongue but delight hidden in his eyes. You kissed me. Tang Wan struggled for a bit. You didn't wake up when I called. So you kissed me. Tang Wan corrected, bit. Zhong He immediately turned back into a man and pressed Tang Wan under him. Then bite me again. Tang Wan blushed and huffed. Put on your clothes first. Zhong He clicked his tongue. What is there to be shy about? Tang Wan covered his face. I'm not a pervert, I don't like to see men naked. Zhong He proved his innocence, I'm not one either. Tang Wan was speechless. What you said would be correct, as long as you put on your clothes. He often didn't wear anything in the mornings. He would only get out of bed if there was nothing else he could do. In the marshal's eyes, it was heavy suffering. It was the same as during the war, if they didn't cheat and gain an advantage, they would suffer heavy losses. It was an absolute law. So before he got up and got dressed, Zhong He couldn't resist kissing Tang Wan in bed. Tang Wan originally wanted to slap him twice, but when he thought of the other's actions the previous night, he lowered his hand. He couldn't pass the days hiding under the covers whenever he was in bed. He would have to slowly get used to it. After Zhong He got up, he went to the clinic to get a check-up. The military doctor would give him a check-up every morning at 7 o'clock. This time, Tang Wan also got up and went to the clinic with Zhong He. Qi Xinming, Zhong He's chief physician, accidentally got a glimpse of Tang Wan. This was the first time that Zhong He's wife had followed him to the clinic. Your body is recovering very well. In another half month, you should be fully healed. But your spiritual strength isn't high enough and we still have to raise it. Now you can do anything like a normal person. There's only one thing. Spiritual strength can only be used in moderation, you can't force it. Qi Shiming finished the examination and reached such a conclusion. Tang Wan was relieved. It was good that Zhong He was finally getting better. It wasn't just from their relationship as husbands, but from a bystander's standpoint, it would be a pity if Zhong He, a military genius, couldn't wear his military uniform anymore. To be honest, Tang Wan really admired Zhong He's ability. It was a little ridiculous that he had never lost a battle before. The marshal is still in good health. After waiting for another half-month, we can consider rehabilitating and allowing you to train again. Until then, it would be a little hard and you should keep up with your nutrition during this period of time. When the military doctor finished, Zhong He looked at Tang Wan. Didn't he hear it? His nutrition should be kept up. Tang Wan smiled and nodded. I understand. I'll work hard and give you a 300 kilogram fat man. Zhong He laughed. Good, I'll wait. If you can't do it. Tang Wan pouted. Then I'll paste 300 kilograms of pork to your body. He was still threatening people, Zhong He had nothing to say. Tang Wan's lips were soft and kissable. It was really distracting when he spoke. After eating a nutritious breakfast, Zhong He read reports in his study. During the past 3 years, there had been military problems, there were battles of all magnitudes and friction between countries that he needed to understand. Tang Wan remained on the side, reading books on pet-raising methods and other important matters. He also needed to understand their living habits. If he didn't have any of the relevant information, he would raise a small animal to death. It was necessary if he wanted to support a small life. Now the system had unlocked more creatures, many of which Tang Wan felt were ugly and would be embarrassed to show, like lizards, rhinos, and so on. He felt that people wouldn't want to see them. However, he would still buy them in case he needed them someday. He would also need to study in advance so all the animals could grow healthily. Lin Bo held 2 cups of tea and 2 servings of snacks, one for each of them. Seeing them both quiet and peaceful, they seemed to get along very well. He smiled happily, his eyes crinkling. For some people, it would take only a glance to know if they were compatible. The years would be quiet, firm and secure, and suitable. In the afternoon, Lin Bo went out and bought a small Cubs book bag. In the evening, Zhong He transformed into De Zhuang to amuse Tang Wan. Every day, he would coax him for 2 or 3 hours, it became one of Zhong He's habits. The marshal was very proud, who else could spoil his wife like him? Lin Bo glanced around, ensuring that there weren't any people around before handing Zhong He the small book bag. Zhong He gave it a cold shoulder. A fat duck was printed on the small blue book bag. What use did he have for this kind of thing? Take it out and hang it on a warship, it could blind the enemy's eyes. Lin Bo whispered, Furen is already suspicious. You can either admit to it yourself or you can do it in a more dignified way. Zhong He frowned and flicked his tail irritably. Tang Wan had poor vision when it came to recognizing species. He was quite clever in this way. After half a day of hesitation, Zhong He ordered Lin Bo to tie the book bag to his back and wandered into the garden to look for Tang Wan. Every day at this time Tang Wan would wander around the garden, saying that he would walk 100 steps after dinner and live to be 90.9 years old. In fact, in Zhong He's opinion, the bad thing that Tang Wan learned from those stars was that he wanted to lose weight. He had grown so skinny but still didn't want to gain some meat. As soon as Tang Wan saw De Zhuang with a small book bag, his heart swelled. De Zhuang. You're becoming more like a big child. Tang Wan picked up the large baby and bragged, look at De Zhuang, he's beautiful everywhere. You look even better with your book bag. What did you learn at school today? Zhong He was helpless and couldn't stand it anymore. Suddenly, he felt that the situation was a little dumb. He wasn't dumb, Tang Wan was dumb. "Baby, let's go see what your uncle is doing." Tang Wan carried De Zhuang and went to find Zhong He. He just wanted to see how Zhong He and De Zhuang got along. Zhong He's body stiffened. He hadn't expected Tang Wan to want to do such a thing. Tang Wan arrived at Zhong He's study and looked from side to side. No one was around. He also went to the clinic, but nobody was there either. Tang Wan frowned and uneasily found Lin Bo. Where did Zhong He go? Lin Bo looked at the old god lying against Tang Wan's chest. Zhong He still had no intention of admitting the truth to Tang Wan. He said with an expressionless face. "I don't know, was he called away by Vice Administrator Chen?" Tang Wan sighed, disappointed. "Well then, we'll wait for a little while for him to come back." Tang Wan turned around and took 2 steps but suddenly remembered. "Lin Bo, what's Zhong He's communications number?" Lin Bo was amused. "You two have been married for so long but you don't even know each other's communications number. When the marshal comes back, you can ask him yourself." Tang Wan buried his face in Zhong He's back and rubbed against his fur. Haha, it was embarrassing. At this moment, De Zhuang suddenly jumped out of his arms, fell, and vanished before their eyes, running as fast as a gust of wind. Tang Wan was uncertain and ran to catch up, but the child had skillfully disappeared down the corridor in the blink of an eye. Turning around in the room, Tang Wan glanced into the bathroom and wondered if the child had run there. Zhong He, who had just set up a signal shield for his communicator, heard Tang Wan's footsteps. All of a sudden, he jumped onto the toilet seat, looking vigilantly at the door. The next second, Tang Wan opened the door and asked, "De Zhuang, do you have diarrhea?" Zhong He. Tang Wan saw De Zhuang's stature, then looked at the height of the toilet. He suddenly realized that the position of the toilet was a little high. "De Zhuang, be careful and don't fall down." Zhong He wanted to urinate for Tang Wan to see. He absolutely wouldn't fall down, nor would it be beyond his reach. Looking at his expression, Tang Wan felt that the child had really grown up and wanted to keep his distance. He might have been a little embarrassed, so he kindly shut the door for him. But, with an old father's mentality, he still left the door open with a crack. He couldn't rest assured and had to peek in to see if De Zhuang had diarrhea or not. Zhong He. He was a person. Seen like this, the other should just go back and leave. Tang Wan was worried and asked outside of the door. "De Zhuang, did you eat something bad at school? Where are you feeling uncomfortable? You ran to the toilet in such a hurry, why aren't you using it yet?" Discovering that the kitten inside hadn't taken care of himself, Tang Wan sighed. He thought in his heart that children were so hard to raise. During their rebellious period, whatever he asked, they wouldn't listen. Thinking of the cat having diarrhea and always having to use the toilet, it was too tall to be convenient. Tang Wan went to the warehouse and found a cub's toilet. It was a little bit like a cat's litter box and sand could be placed inside. It was suitable for cubs under the age of 3. It was sanitary and convenient. It also allowed the cubs to learn to hide their odors from an early age. He had bought it before for De Zhuang but he hadn't wanted it. Now De Zhuang was uncomfortable and Tang Wan felt that it would be better to use it for a little while. When Zhong He calmed down and left the toilet, he saw that Tang Wan had set up a cat's litter box for him in the corridor. Zhong He's claws went stiff. Tang Wan waved his hand. "Zhuang, come and try." Zhong He took a deep breath, turned his head, and left. Tang Wan chased after him. "My son, come back and give it a try. When you're too late to use the toilet, you can use it. I'll have to trim your fur." After chasing for half a day, Tang Wan found that De Zhuang had hidden away and couldn't find him dead or alive. He finally had to give up. Lin Bo found Zhong He in the attic, blushing until his face went red. He reminded him with a grin. "Why don't you confess? You've already been a little cub for a year, it's nothing to be ashamed of." Zone, he glared at the old man. Wouldn't it make him lose face? Lin Bo innocently chewed on some melon seeds, he had no other ways. Young people, he didn't know how they thought. Tang Wan knew that De Zhuang wasn't happy, but didn't know why. This milk cat, there seemed to always be a few days where he would go a little crazy. He planned to make good food and coax him. Unfortunately, the child couldn't speak. If he could, it would be much easier to communicate and he wouldn't have to guess. Tang Wan picked up the books he read in the morning and checked when beast men would become human and when they would speak. According to the information, the more spiritual strength a beast man had, the higher their IQ would be when they were young and the faster they would grow. Usually, they would become human before they were 6 years old and could talk at around 2 years old. Tang Wan saw Lin Bo coming down the stairs and asked him solemnly, "Lin Bo, how old is De Zhuang?" Lin Bo looked up and thought. "I think .3. He almost said 30 years old. Tang Wan was shocked. De Zhuang couldn't speak even though he's already 3 years old, this is a brain development problem. Zong he. Bite me, carrot omega carrot, I've started a new project. It features guides and sentinels, quantum beasts, plenty of face-slapping, and a mang egg. Check it out. Chapter 20. Oh my god, De Zhuang knows how to talk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Callous Editor. Walker Tang Wan dearly loved De Zhuang. Never mind such a small body getting sick, there was also a problem with his IQ. It was no wonder that he was ignored when he talked to De Zhuang before. He was so unrestrained because he didn't understand. It was a pity that he couldn't even speak at such an age, he might also be an illegitimate son of the royal family. Tang Wan sighed, how could this child's fate be so bad? With that thought, Tang Wan went straight to the kitchen to make a good tonic for De Zhuang to eat. For brain-stimulating tonics, fish oil was necessary. He was very anxious, since De Zhuang hadn't eaten the cat food he had made before. Relatively speaking, the nutrition of dry cat food was better than that of wet cat food, but cat food wasn't as good as meat. De Zhuang refused to eat any of it. Wet cat food tasted good, but special nutritional powder would be needed to be added to it to ensure full nutrition. At the moment, Tang Wan didn't have any nutritional powder, so Tang Wan took a small container of tonic and made do with it. When the food was ready, Tang Wan drenched it with the tonic like it was a fragrant sesame oil. He found bowl 3 times larger than De Zhuang's face and filled it. When Zong he saw the bowl in front of him at dinner, he choked. He had the urge to transform back into his original form and have a deep conversation with Tang Wan about species. Tang Wan looked at him and wondered, what's wrong? This is a specialty meal I made for you, why don't you eat it? Tang Wan tried to be intimidating and threatened, if you don't eat it, I'll give it to your uncle. Your uncle can eat 10 portions of food by himself, you'll go hungry. Zong he looked at his stomach, there's a type of eating, which was the one where his wife thought he could eat. 1 portion compared to 10, it really was insufficient. Zong he dragged the food bowl towards himself with his claws, in a sullen mood. Not to mention eating it, even when he sniffed it he could smell the nutrient solution that had been added in. He was of a carnivorous race and already had to drink nutrient solution on the battlefield. Why should he have to drink it at home too? Tang Wan watched him push the bowl away with a claw, not eating anymore, and he was a little angry. What do you really want? Why aren't you eating? The kitten in front of him was cold-faced and not afraid at all. Tang Wan's face was also frigid and he took the food bowl. Not eating. You won't have any food tonight then. He couldn't indulge the little cub, the more he got used to it, the more difficult he would be to manage. Normally he could spoil him, but it was a matter of principle. Tang Wan wouldn't back down at all. When he returned from putting the cat food away in the kitchen, Tang Wan found that half of his bowl of food had been eaten by the milk cat sitting on the table. He tensed, upset. What kind of cub was this? He sat down at the table and watched the kitten eat without even glancing at Tang Wan. He focused, telling himself to calm down. This child's IQ was lower than that of normal children's, so he should be more tolerant. De Zhuang, do you feel like you have done something wrong? When Tang Wan had finished asking, his heart sank. Asking this kind of question made him feel like an idiot. This child might not be able to understand him. While Tang Wan was entangled, the bowl of food had already been completely eaten up. The kitten also had a specific character. He licked his mouth after eating, wiped it with a napkin, and rubbed his paw against his mouth. He jumped off the table wanting to leave. Tang Wan reached the end of his patience. He grabbed the other's tail and pulled him back onto the table. He scowled, "You child, you've forgotten who raised you to be so chubby." Lin Bo arrived in the dining room with a young officer in tow, talking and laughing, and they were both shocked to see Tang Wan and Zhong He's actions. Furan. Your hashtag K2026, Lin Bo was surprised to see Zhong He not fighting back. Were young people playing like that now? Tang Wan, who had wanted to commit an act of violence, raised his head and smiled, his eyes scrunching up. He changed the position of his hands into a gentle stroke and picked up De Zhuang, as if nothing had happened. He laughed, "I was playing with him, small children can be naughty." The officer behind Lin Bo looked curiously at Tang Wan. He saw the cat in his arms and frowned doubtfully. The officer was tall and good-looking. He flashed a sunny smile and asked, "Is this the legendary marshal's wife?" Lin Bo enthusiastically introduced, "Yes, this is my family's Furan. This is the marshal's brother, Lin Zhua." Lin Zhua laughed and waved his hand. He was a little bashful, "No, I'm his subordinate. I'm the 4 deputy officers junior, just a junior in charge of logistics." The corners of Tang Wan's lips curved up. This young man was quite modest, so young and still became Zhong He's trusted vice administrator. He certainly had outstanding ability. Tang Wan asked with a smile, "Lin Bo said that you were Zhong He's brother, so you don't have to be so polite. Have you had dinner yet? I can go into the kitchen to make something." Lin Zhua shook his head, embarrassed. "No, I ate when I was back with the army. I'm here to deliver something to the marshal." Tang Wan was surprised. Didn't he go to the army headquarters? Yes, Lin Bo took back his words, "He'll be back soon." Oh, so it's like this. Tang Wan didn't doubt him. He carried De Zhuang against his chest and said gently, "You guys talk, and I'll make tea for you." No need, you don't have to be so courteous. I'm not thirsty." Lin Zhua politely refused Tang Wan's kindness. But after seeing the kitten in Tang Wan's arms, he became stiff. This is. Zhong He's eyes darkened. Lin Zhua had seen what his original grown body looked like. Lin Zhua roared in shock, a child had already been born. When was he born? I haven't heard anything about this. Lin Zhua quickly felt around his body, sifting around the storage belt of his combat suit. A gun, a multi-purpose controller. There was nothing to give the child. Tang Wan still had a smile on his face, but his heart was a little uncomfortable. Zhong He's brother also thought that De Zhuang was Zhong He's child. This child looked exactly the same as Zhong He had. Was he really not Zhong He and someone else's child? Was what Lin Bo said really true? They wouldn't normally joke about royalty, but if he hadn't misunderstood. When Lin Bo saw the look on Tang Wan's face, he angrily smacked Lin Zhua on the back of the head. What nonsense are you saying? This is the marshal's nephew. The marshal had been asleep for 3 years and Furan arrived only a year ago. When would they have time to give birth to a child? Lin Zhua reacted, covering the back of his head and laughed merrily. I just saw that the color of the fur was a little familiar. How has the marshal's health been recently? Lin Bo touched his beard, relieved. Very good. Let him rest for a few more days, it's rare for him to have free time. I hope he comes back a bit earlier. If he's not here, then we'll be missing our backbone. He looked at Tang Wan and smiled gently. Whenever Tang Wan spoke, there would be two shallow dimples. He was truly of pure Asian descent. Lin Zhuo sighed. The marshal will be the marshal. Even in a coma, a beautiful partner will drop out of the sky for him. Do you have any siblings? It doesn't matter what gender they are, only if they look good. Zhong He's ears twitched and slapped with his claws. He had asked if Tang Wan had any siblings. Was it because he liked the way Tang Wan looked? He hadn't fought in 3 years, his skin was itching. Tang Wan was shocked and quickly hugged the kitten in his arms. De Zhuang, how could you scratch people? You're too rude. Lin Zhuo covered his face and tilted his head, looking at Zhong He's expression. He murmured, it hurt a lot, that made me feel like the time the marshal beat me. Tang Wan was speechless. Young man, are you a quivering M? When Lin Zhuo looked at Zhong He again, he still felt that their coats were similar. He whispered, is he really not born from the marshal and his wife? Zhong He reached out with his paws and tried to hit him. Tang Wan wasted no time in carrying him away. Lin Zhuo still continued, he really wasn't born from them. Lin Bo hissed, you child, how did they say that you were obedient? Lin Zhuo raised his hands to beg for mercy. Bo, I just saw that he looked like the bride that Carlos' family raised and deliberately asked. I'm not foolish, how can I talk nonsense? Lin Bo also wanted to beat him. Don't directly use the crown prince's name. It's the princess, not the bride that his family raised. Don't go out and blabber about it. Fine. Lin Zhuo also realized that there was a problem and immediately stopped talking foolishly. He turned around and sent a message to his brothers. The marshal's important things had already been delivered, but there was one more important thing he had to tell them. Right after, all of the senior members of the Legion knew that the marshal and his new wife possibly, maybe, had a child. As for when the child was born, who cared? Anyway, the marshal was all powerful, even in a coma, he could probably have a child. Zhong He sneezed several times and Tang Wan quickly checked over him. Still okay, no fever, no runny nose, clean eyes, not sick. You probably were sneezing from the dust. Zhong He already didn't want to struggle. He wouldn't let De Zhuang come tomorrow or the day after. He wouldn't come for a short period of time. Tang Wan gloomily looked at De Zhuang's fur and remembered what Lin Zhuo had said. Tang Wan felt his heart become more and more bitter. He touched the kitten's head. In a tone that he wasn't aware sounded aggrieved, he asked, Zhuang, look at your fur. Are you really not Zhong He and someone else's bastard child? I'm not going to be your stepfather, am I? No, Zhong He couldn't hold back his anger and patted Tang Wan's head with his paws. He squeezed out the word between his teeth. How did this kind of thing come out? Was he the kind of man that would mess around? Tang Wan stared blankly at the kitten standing on the table. He just seemed to have heard him speak. Zhong He gritted his teeth and warned him word by word, I am not an illegitimate child. I am not. Tang Wan shocked and held his face, Zhuang, you can talk. Your IQ is okay. Zhong He glared angrily at him. Why would his IQ have problems? Tang Wan was so excited that he carried Zhong He in a 100-meter dash and rushed to Lin Bo to share the good news. Lin Bo, De Zhuang can talk. Lin Bo had just sent his foolish nephew Lin Zhuo away. Looking at Tang Wan being so noisy, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He should have learned it with his classmates at school. Tang Wan patted the kitten's head and forgot all the things that had just made him angry. I'm moved, De Zhuang is too incredible. You can only say simple words, but the more you speak, the more you'll learn. It'll be good if we practiced. Tang Wan held the cat in his arms and pointed towards the things in front of him. This is an egg, a bird egg. Rice, big rice. Zhong He jumped out of Tang Wan's arms and fled. He felt like he would become an idiot if he continued on like this. Tang Wan was excited and caught up with him. Zhuang, don't you love daddy? Eddie et Zhong He jumped up and angrily pushed Tang Wan. This daddy, added to the ones before, even if it was the 25,000th daddy, sooner or later he would return it all to him. Tang Wan frightened himself from a stumble, surprised. How could a child be so strong? Tang Wan was no longer restraining himself, rubbing the kitten into a fur ball and until his heart softened. How are you so good looking? It doesn't matter if you're Zhong He's illegitimate son, you'll be my baby in the future. I don't want him, I want you, alright. Zhong He angrily bared his teeth and almost transformed. He didn't want him, but he wanted a child. Lin Bo, don't tell anyone. Lin Zhua, 5 seconds later. You would not believe what just happened.